Chapter 19. Chapter 19. 3 strokes bet under Liu Dao's lead, the two of them quickly arrived at the reception hall. At this moment, there were 3 people sitting in the hall, 1 man and 2 women. One of the women was the beautiful and elegant Zhuo Xiong-er. At this moment, Zhuo Xiong-er was looking around in boredom. Her face was full of curiosity. The other woman was slightly older than Zhuo Xiong-er. She was about 18 years old. Although her appearance was slightly inferior to Zhuo Xiong-er's, her figure was very hot. She had curves in all the right places, and her slim waist exuded a seductive texture. Zhuowen knew that the woman with a hot figure in front of him should be the pavilion master of the Blue Charm Pavilion, Zhuo Meishui. The last person was a blue-clothed youth with a gloomy gaze. He sat upright in his seat without saying a word, but his gloomy eyes would occasionally carry a ferocious expression. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and immediately focused his attention on the young man in blue. He could feel the powerful energy contained in the young man's body, which definitely surpassed that of Zhuo Xiong-er and Zhuo Meishui. It was obvious that the young man's cultivation was the highest among the 3. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he suddenly stepped into the hall. Zhuowen's entrance immediately attracted the attention of the 3 people in the hall. Zhuo Xiong-er's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of joy, while the voluptuous Zhuo Meishui was sizing up Zhuowen with interest. As for Zhuo Tian, he was staring coldly at Zhuowen's figure, his eyes faintly containing hatred. Zhuowen, you're really not bad. You can actually become the owner of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion. You should know that even when I asked grandfather for this pavilion, grandfather would not agree no matter what. Now, it's all yours. Zhuo Xiong-er put her hands on her hips as she curled her lips and said with a hint of jealousy, I've heard that little brother Zhuowen was born with triple armor soul. His talent is truly terrifying. His aptitude is much better than the self-proclaimed #1 genius of the Zhuo family. Zhuo Meishui swayed her slim waist as she leisurely walked over to Zhuo Wen. Her charming peach blossom eyes looked at Zhuo Wen with a strange expression before she covered her mouth and laughed coquettishly. Zhuo Meishui, what do you mean by that? Zhuo Xiong-er's beautiful eyes turned murderous when she heard that. Zhuowen was slightly startled. The 2 women in front of him were clearly not on good terms. Seeing that the 2 women were about to fight, Zhuowen had a headache. He coldly said, if the 2 of you have a conflict, don't cause trouble in my Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Otherwise, don't blame me, Zhuowen, for being impolite. What a good impoliteness. I've heard that the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion is arrogant and despotic. Seeing it today, I wonder what kind of impoliteness the pavilion master wants. Before the 2 women could answer, the blue-clothed young man who had been sitting on the side of the hall suddenly said coldly. His pair of fierce eyes were looking at Zhuowen with a sinister look. As soon as the blue-clothed young man opened his mouth, the 2 women who were originally tit for tat suddenly quieted down. The 2 of them looked at the blue-clothed young man with some fear and unexpectedly became silent at the same time. I'm the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Is it arrogant for me to dissuade 2 troublemakers? Is it not arrogant for you to bark like a dog in my territory? Zhuowen retorted sarcastically. Since he knew that the blue-clothed young man was Zhuo Wu's big brother, Zhuowen didn't plan on giving him any face. After all, he had already destroyed Zhuo Wu's dantian. The 2 of them were already like fire and water, so Zhuowen didn't pretend to be polite. The moment Zhuowen's words came out, the entire hall became silent. The 2 women who originally didn't like each other looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. They clearly knew the strength of the blue-clothed young man in front of them. It could be said that even if the 2 of them worked together, they wouldn't necessarily be a match for the blue-clothed young man. Zhuowen was only at the Divine Veiler stage and was also the new pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. He actually didn't give the blue-clothed young man any face at all. Zhuowen, I really don't know what right you have to be so arrogant. Do you think that just because you have 3 armor souls and are highly regarded by the master, you can do whatever you want in the inner court? Today, I'll let you know what it means by there is always someone better than you. Zhuo Tian stood up with a swoosh. He looked at Zhuo Wen with a ferocious expression. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura erupted from Zhuo Tian's body. Zhuowen said with a hint of mockery, what you say sounds good, But I'm afraid you came here today for your little brother, Zhuo Wu. You're clearly here for your own personal grudge, yet you make it sound so dignified. Hee hee. Since you already know, then I won't beat around the bush. I came here today for my little brother, and I won't bully you. As long as you can take 3 of my moves, I can ignore the grudge between you and my little brother, Zhuo Tian said with a cold voice. Hearing Zhuo Tian's words, Liu Dao, who had been standing respectfully at the door, was shocked. He was very clear on Zhuo Tian's strength. He was at least at the peak of the spirit-detecting realm. Although Liu Dao knew many of Zhuo Wen's secrets, there was still a gap of 2 whole realms between the two of them. Moreover, there were some grudges between the two of them. Zhuo Tian would definitely not hold back. If Zhuo Wen failed to block Liu Dao's attack, he would most likely be beaten to death. Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishue were standing on the side of the hall. The 2 women's eyes flashed as they looked at Zhuo Wen and Zhuo Tian. Surprisingly, they didn't say anything. Instead, they looked at the 2 of them with interest. Zhuo Meishue, who had a fiery figure, revealed a trace of excitement in her eyes. She looked at Zhuo Wen with curiosity. She wanted to know if Zhuo Wen would agree to Zhuo Tian's request. In Zhuo Meishue's opinion, Zhuo Wen, who was only at the Divine Veiler realm, definitely wouldn't be able to take 3 of Zhuo Tian's full-strength moves. Zhuo Meishue even thought that Zhuo Wen wouldn't be able to take even 1 of Zhuo Tian's moves. Once a cultivator's cultivation reached the spirit-detecting realm, they would undergo a true transformation. Not only would the spirit energy in their body become more robust, but their armor spirit would also evolve, increasing the strength of the cultivator's body. It could be said that even if 10 Viscera realm cultivators worked together, they wouldn't necessarily be a match for a spirit-detecting realm cultivator. However, when Zhuo Meishue saw Zhuo Wen's calm eyes, a trace of shock appeared in her beautiful eyes. She didn't think that the youth in front of her could still be so calm in this situation. Pretending to be calm? Zhuo Meishue muttered to herself in confusion. Zhuo Wen, could it be that you don't dare? Weren't you very arrogant just now? Zhuo Tian said with a trace of disdain on his malevolent face. Zhuo Wen pondered for a moment before indifferently saying, "Why wouldn't I dare? It's just that the chips you're offering are too little. How about this? If I can't take 3 of your moves, then my life and death is up to you. However, if I can take 3 of your moves, then you'll have to kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times. At the same time, you'll have to give me 10,000 yuan. How about that?" The yuan was the common currency of the heavenly armor continent. 100 yuan was enough for an ordinary family to spend for an entire year. 10,000 yuan was an unimaginable amount of wealth. It could be said that 10,000 yuan was not a small amount even for the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master Zhuo Tian. The moment Zhuo Wen's words came out, the entire place fell silent once more. Even Zhuo Tian couldn't help but be stunned. Originally, the few people present thought that Zhuo Wen would absolutely not agree to Zhuo Tian's unreasonable request. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, not only did Zhuo Wen agree, he even very arrogantly increased the stakes of the bet. Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishue's gazes were rather complicated as they looked at the calm youth in front of them. They really couldn't understand how Zhuo Wen could be so confident. "Haha, you're really arrogant enough. I agree to your condition, but I don't think you have a chance to win," Zhuo Tian said with a cold smile. "Whether I can win or not is not up to you to decide. This place is not suitable for fighting. Let's go to the plaza in front of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion first." Zhuo Wen faintly smiled and left the reception hall first. Zhuo Tian pondered for a moment, then followed closely behind and flew out. It seems that this guy really doesn't know how terrifying Zhuo Tian is. It seems that this brat is dead for sure. Watching the 2 leave, Zhuo Meishue shook her head. She looked at Zhuo Wen's back with a slightly disappointed gaze. That's not necessarily true. This guy Zhuo Wen is very strange. Looking at how confident he is right now, perhaps he still has some powerful trump card. Zhuo Xiong glanced at Zhuo Meishue and coldly snorted. "It seems that you have a lot of confidence in this brat. Why don't we make a bet as well? If this brat can take 3 of Zhuo Tian's moves, then I lose. If not, then I win. How about it?" Zhuo Meishue crossed her arms and looked at Zhuo Xiong provocatively. "What's the bet?" Zhuo Xiong somewhat hesitantly asked. He. My bet is the first-grade defensive crystal diamond ring, Zhuo Meishui said as she took out a palm-sized golden crystal from her bosom. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of undetectable pain. Obviously, this crystal in her hand was very precious. Zhuo Xiong's pretty face was suddenly shocked. She didn't expect Zhuo Meishui to take out a crystal as a bet. This was really beyond her expectations. A crystal was a special kind of energy crystal. This kind of crystal contained a special power that could be used for both defense and attack. It even had some other wonderful uses. Moreover, crystals were very rare in the heavenly armor continent. Some high-grade crystals were even sold at sky-high prices in certain places. It was clear how precious and rare crystals were. This is the first-grade offensive crystal blood-chilling claw. Zhuo Xiong also took out a palm-sized crystal, but it was blood-red in color. Looking at her pained expression, it seemed that this crystal was also very important to her. Looking at the blood-red crystal in Zhuo Xiong's hand, Zhuo Meishui's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of undetectable joy. She glanced at Zhuo Xiong and said, since we've already taken out our chips, let's see how Zhuoan and Zhuotian will fare. Chapter 20. Zhuoan vs. Zhuotian. On the square of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion, Zhuoan and Zhuotian faced each other from a distance. There was a large crowd gathered around the square, and most of them were hidden dragon guards and servants of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion. A small portion of them were passers-by attracted by the lively scene. In just a short quarter of an hour, the originally spacious square was filled with people. When these people found out about the bet between Zhuoan and Zhuotian, their faces were filled with excitement. Zhuoan. Due to his powerful performance on the martial practice field and his shocking triple armor soul, he had become the most popular person in the Zhuo family in just a few days. Now, he had become the pavilion master of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion. Zhuotian was the leader of the inner court core disciples. Whether it was his status or cultivation, he was far above the other core disciples. He could be said to be an overlord among the core disciples. The two of them were like dazzling stars within the inner academy. At this moment, they were actually preparing to fight. Although it was only a promise of 3 moves, it still caused quite a number of people's faces to be filled with excitement. One by one, they stopped in the open ground and watched the two figures facing each other in the distance. In a corner of the square, the bearded Zhuo Hanzhong and the handsome Zhuo Lianqing stood side by side. Their gazes were solemn as they looked at Zhuotian and Zhuotian. Zhuo Lianqing glanced at Zhuo Hanzhong beside him and said, "Big brother Hanzhong, do you think the pavilion master can last 3 moves against the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master? Although I don't want to admit it, I really don't think the pavilion master can last 3 moves against the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master. The Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master's cultivation has reached the peak of the spirit detecting realm. Even the 2nd and 3rd ranked White Lotus Pavilion's pavilion master and the Blue Charm Pavilion's pavilion master might not be a match for the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master. Our pavilion master's talent is great, and he also has a triple armor soul. However, his cultivation is too low, only at the divine Vela realm. The two of them are 2 whole realms apart. Even if it's only 3 moves, I think it will be difficult for the pavilion master to take it." Zhuo Hanzhong looked at Zhuowen's back with a complicated gaze and spoke with a strange tone. Hearing Zhuo Hanzhong's evaluation, Zhuo Lianqing revealed a look of schadenfreude. It was clear that he was still holding a grudge against Zhuotian for defeating him. Whoosh, whoosh. With the sound of wind breaking, 2 graceful figures suddenly appeared in the square. They were Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishui, who were smiling sweetly. As soon as the 2 women entered the square, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the square. Even the fanatics who paid attention to Zhuo Wen and Zhuotian were attracted by the 2 women's enchanting figures and gorgeous appearances. I heard that the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion is only at the divine Vela realm. I didn't expect the top 3 pavilion masters of the inner court to gather here. How did he do it? Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishui's entrance caused a lot of discussion in the square. However, the 2 women were obviously used to this kind of situation, so they didn't pay any attention to it. They quietly walked to a corner of the square and didn't say anything. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, the elegant and beautiful Zhuo Xiong suddenly came to Zhuo Wen's side and whispered something to him. The two of them were very close to each other, almost sticking to each other. Zhuo Xiong's appearance was one of the best in the entire Zhuo clan, and even in Tengjiao City. There were many suitors from both the Zhuo clan and Tengjiao City. However, Zhuo Xiong's personality was somewhat cold, and she rejected all of these suitors, causing many of them to sigh. But now, Zhuo Xiong, who had a cold temperament and high standards, was actually so close to a strange man. The two of them looked very intimate. Suddenly, everyone in the square looked at Zhuowen with anger and jealousy. They didn't expect that the goddess they pursued so hard would have such an intimate relationship with him. Zhuowen clearly felt the unfriendly gazes around the square. He frowned and looked at the girl in front of him. "Why did you suddenly come here? If you don't have anything to say, please step aside." Zhuo Xiong was startled. She didn't expect Zhuowen to have such a reaction. Ever since she was young, she had always been the center of attention. No matter where she went, she was accompanied by countless praises and flattery. She was also very confident in her appearance. As long as she waved her hand, there would be some so-called young talents who would constantly fawn over her. This time, she took the initiative to approach Zhuowen because of her bet with Zhuo Meishui. She hoped that Zhuowen could use all of his strength to withstand 3 moves from Zhuo Tian. But she didn't expect Zhuo Xiong to have such a reaction. This made Zhuo Xiong, who was feeling very good about herself, feel a little unnatural. "Zhuo Wen, you'd better be able to withstand 3 moves from Zhuo Tian. I'm betting on you. If you lose, I won't let you off." Zhuo Xiong was so angry that she stomped her foot and said with a cold snort. Zhuo Wen was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Zhuo Xiong would actually bet on him. Anyone could see the disparity between him and Zhuo Tian, but Zhuo Xiong still chose him. Could it be that this woman had so much confidence in him? Zhuowen looked at Zhuo Xiong meaningfully and said, "If I win, I will naturally win. Now that you've said your piece, please step aside. My bet with Zhuo Tian is about to begin." "Arrogant fellow. You better be careful. Zhuo Tian's armor soul is the wind god spear. This armor soul focuses on attack and penetration. It is very powerful once it is used. Fortunately, he failed to break through because of Zhuo Wu and is still at the peak of the spirit detecting realm. If he breaks through to the soul transformation realm, you will have no chance of winning." A trace of caution appeared in Zhuo Xiong's beautiful eyes. She looked deeply at Zhuowen before leaving the square. "Zhuowen, looks like your luck with women is pretty good. Even Zhuo Xiong is so intimate with you. However, it is impossible between you and Zhuo Xiong because Xiong is the woman I, Zhuo Tian, have taken a fancy to. You are about to become a cold corpse." When Zhuo Tian saw that Zhuo Xiong was walking so close to Zhuo Wen, his face became increasingly gloomy. His ferocious eyes were faintly covered with dense blood vessels, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister grin. "Ha ha. I am looking forward to seeing you kneel in front of me and kowtow," Zhuowen said, unwilling to be outdone. "Reckless fool." Zhuo Tian roared and turned into an afterimage. A powerful aura suddenly erupted from Zhuo Tian's body and formed a huge whirlwind that filled the square. Ferocious tiger fist. Zhuo Tian let out a low roar, and his fists immediately followed a strange trajectory as they blasted towards Zhuo Wen. The phantom of a fierce tiger that was several zhong tall suddenly condensed behind Zhuo Tian, and its 2 razor-sharp claws suddenly enveloped Zhuo Wen. Ferocious tiger fist. It's actually Zhuo Tian's best low-grade human-grade armor skill, Ferocious Tiger Fist. I didn't expect Zhuo Tian to use his full strength right from the start. Zhuo Xiong furrowed her brows as she looked at Zhuo Wen with worry in her beautiful eyes. "Little sister Xiong, it looks like your blood-chilling claw is about to change owners." The corners of Zhuo Meishui's mouth curled into a smile as she looked at Zhuo Xiong with a slightly complacent expression. "The battle has just begun. You are making a judgment too early." Zhuo Xiong looked coldly at the complacent Zhuo Meishui and said indifferently. At this moment, the ferocious tiger that Zhuo Tian had transformed into was only 10 steps away from Zhuowen. Just when everyone was feeling sorry for Zhuowen, A dragon's roar suddenly erupted from Zhuowen's body. Then, four enormous draconic auras flew out of Zhuowen's body and pounced on the incoming tiger without hesitation. With a loud bang, a blazing light suddenly exploded in the middle of the square, causing everyone to involuntarily block the light with their hands. When everyone opened their eyes, they were shocked to see that Zhuo Tian, who had transformed into a ferocious tiger, was tightly bound by four enormous dragons and was unable to move. Do you think that just four enormous dragons can block my ferocious tiger fist? Zhuo Tian coldly snorted. His fists suddenly waved rapidly, and the tiger phantom that was originally entangled suddenly broke free. Its two sharp claws fiercely clawed at the dragon's head. With a crackling sound, the head of the first giant dragon was crushed, and it slowly dissipated. Zhuowen's face changed and he made a prompt decision and shouted, "Explode." As soon as Zhuowen's words came out, the remaining three enormous dragons immediately writhed in pain. Then, the three enormous dragons simultaneously swelled and with a shrill roar, they actually exploded one after another. The enormous energy fluctuation turned into a powerful wave of air that continuously blew in all directions. Some of the weaker warriors were actually blown back by the heat wave. The ferocious tiger image that was originally showing off its invincible might actually roared unwillingly under the explosion of the three enormous dragons and gradually dissipated, revealing a slightly miserable Zhuo Tian. On the other hand, Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground with one knee. Obviously, the explosion of the enormous dragons should have caused quite a lot of side effects to Zhuowen. He caught it. Zhuowen actually caught Zhuo Tian's ferocious tiger fist. At this moment, the square was abnormally quiet. No one had thought that Zhuowen would actually be able to block Zhuo Tian's ferocious tiger fist at the last moment. It has to be said that when Zhuo Tian used the ferocious tiger fist, even a spirit-detecting realm cultivator wouldn't dare to casually receive it. However, Zhuo Wen, who was only in the divine Veiler realm, was able to receive it in the end. Everyone's gazes toward Zhuo Wen gradually changed. They finally understood why the head of the family had handed over the management of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion to this youth. This youth was simply too abnormal. He was only in the divine Veiler realm, yet he was able to block the full power attack of a spirit-detecting realm warrior. This kind of terrifying strength caused many people to feel a chill. Chapter 21. Profound understanding stage. At this moment, Zhuo Tian's clothes were tattered and his hair was a bit messy, but his face was still rosy. It was clear that the explosion of the three dragons had not caused much damage to him, but he was in a slightly sorry state. "You do have some ability, but that was only my first move. You look like you're seriously injured. Do you think you can take my remaining two moves?" There was a trace of shock in Zhuo Tian's fierce eyes. He found it hard to believe that Zhuowen could block his ferocious tiger fist, but then his eyes became even more ferocious as he spoke. "Little sister Xiong you have good eyesight." This guy was able to block an all-out attack from someone at the peak of the spirit-detecting stage as a divine Veiler stage cultivator. It can be seen that his potential is heaven-defying. If he is given time to develop, it is not impossible for him to replace Zhuo Tian as the strongest person in the Zhuo family. He can only blame himself for being too hot-headed and agreeing to this bet. He is bound to lose. Zhuo Tian hasn't even used his soul armor yet, and now that Zhuowen has been seriously injured by Zhuo Tian's ferocious tiger fist, Zhuowen is bound to die in the next move. "Little sister Xiong you must prepare the blood-chilling claw." Zhuo Meishue gave Zhuo Xiong a provocative glance and smiled. "The victor hasn't been decided yet you're so sure that Zhuo Tian will win?" Zhuo Xiong's eyes were filled with irritation as she impatiently waved her hand. Although Zhuo Xiong was surprised that Zhuowen could block Zhuo Tian's ferocious tiger fist, her heart sank to the bottom when she saw that Zhuowen was seriously injured. "Zhuowen, you bastard. You bastard, you better not lose. If you lose, I will never forgive you," Zhuo Xiong thought to herself as she gently bit her cherry-red lips. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Cough, cough. Is this all a peak spirit-detecting stage cultivator can do? Looking at your arrogant face, I really thought you were a peak expert, but it looks like you aren't that great. Slowly standing up, Zhuowen's eyes were slightly scarlet. A strange killing intent suddenly burst out from Zhuowen's eyes. Zhuo Tian was a little surprised by Zhuowen's strange behavior. He curled his lips and said coldly, "Let's see how long you can be so stubborn." After saying that, Zhuo Tian let out a low shout. Then, a long spear that was taller than a person suddenly appeared in his hand. The moment the long spear appeared, the surrounding yuan qi suddenly boiled and gathered in the long spear. As the yuan qi continued to gather, the originally faint shadow of the long spear suddenly became solid, and finally turned into a spear of light that emitted a white light. "Zhuowen, this is my armor soul, the Wind God Spear. It's your honor to die under my Wind God Spear." Wind God Spear, whirlwind. Zhuo Tian straightened his back. With the long spear in his hand, a powerful aura burst out from his body. At the same time, a huge yuan qi whirlwind wrapped around the long spear, as if the whirlwind had turned into a shield to protect the long spear. Zhuo Tian's feet kicked off the ground, and his entire body shot toward Zhuowen like a cannonball. Countless yuan qi whirlwinds revolved around Zhuo Tian's body, making for a spectacular sight. Zhuowen's scarlet eyes were filled with calmness. In truth, Zhuowen's primordial dragon raw fist was about to break through, but he lacked an opportunity, so he hadn't been able to break through. The reason Zhuowen agreed to Zhuo Tian's bet was because he wanted to borrow the pressure from Zhuo Tian's strength to break through to the 5-dragon raw realm. "Haha, this is the feeling. I can feel the excitement coming from all the blood in my body." Zhuowen laughed loudly, then took out a blood essence pill and swallowed it without hesitation. This blood essence pill was made by the leader of the men in black who tried to assassinate Zhuowen. Not only did it contain all the essence of a divine Vela realm warrior, it even contained the leader's giant armor soul. The reason why Zhuowen didn't swallow it before was because he was afraid that the resentment in the blood essence pill would be too strong, and it would affect him to a certain extent. But now, facing Zhuowen's strength, Zhuowen had no choice but to swallow it in hopes of suppressing the injuries on his body. Crackle. A crisp sound suddenly came from Zhuowen's body, followed by a powerful wave of elemental energy flowing from the blood essence pill into his dantian. Zhuowen could feel that the injuries caused by Zhuowen's ferocious tiger fist were gradually healing under the powerful wave of elemental energy. Zhuowen could also feel the gigantic armor soul contained within the blood essence pill entering his sea of consciousness. The gigantic armor soul's only soul skill was also clearly transmitted into Zhuowen's mind. Giant transformation increases the power of a weapon or armor skill by 2 times, lasts for 15 minutes. Everyone in the plaza stared blankly at Zhuo Tian, who was like a god descending to the mortal world. Countless elemental energy whirlwinds gathered in Zhuo Tian's Wind God Spear, and the originally wide area was now covered by the powerful elemental energy whirlwinds, and no one could approach within a radius of 10 miles. "It's over. Zhuowen is really finished. I didn't expect Zhuo Tian to use this move, I really didn't expect it." Zhuo Xiong'er's charming face was now ashen, and her beautiful eyes had dimmed by a lot. Zhuo Meishue's beautiful eyes turned, and she couldn't help but reveal an expression of joy on her face. The other people in the plaza also revealed a shocked expression. They knew that Zhuowen was doomed under this powerful move of Zhuo Tian's. Giant transformation. Chaotic origin roaring dragon fist. 4 dragon roars. A calm voice that contained boundless killing intent slowly came from the plaza, and then 4 more giant dragon auras fiercely broke through the endless elemental energy whirlwinds in the plaza, and the huge dragon mouths unceremoniously flew towards Zhuo Tian, who was shrouded in the surging elemental energy whirlwinds. With a loud bang, the hard bluestone floor of the plaza gradually cracked, and the cracks spread out like a spider web. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the 4 giant dragon auras that appeared in Zhuowen's body once again blocked Zhuo Tian's Wind God Spear. At this moment, the plaza suddenly became deathly silent. Moreover, everyone faintly discovered that the giant dragon auras that appeared in Zhuowen's body were even more powerful than before, and the layers of scales on the dragon's body could be clearly seen. Zhuowen snorted, and looked at Zhuo Tian with a slightly provocative gaze, and said, "This is the second move. What else do you have next? Feel free to use it." Zhuo Tian's pupils shrank, and he shouted angrily, "Arrogant guy, I'm going to kill you." Wind God Spear, whirlwind scattering clouds. Zhuo Tian flew into a rage, and unceasingly mobilized the elemental energy in his body. A huge wave of elemental energy suddenly burst out from the wind god spear in his hand, and then the wind god spear actually swelled many times, turning into a pillar that could support the sky. Go to hell, Zhuowen! The wind god spear that looked like a pillar that could support the sky ferociously stabbed towards the 4 giant dragons above the plaza. Rumble! A thunderous sound exploded in the air, and the first giant dragon was only able to resist for a short while before it was pierced through by the wind god spear. Following which, the second and third dragons also crumbled under the might of the wind god's spear. The brilliance on the surface of the wind god's spear that had pierced through the 3 dragons had dimmed significantly. It was apparent that the might of the wind god's spear had weakened significantly after being blocked by the 3 dragons. The 4th giant dragon roared, and a pair of giant claws suddenly swung towards the wind god spear. With a rumble, the wind god spear actually stopped under the dragon's claws for the first time. Hiss! Everyone in the plaza looked at the 4th giant dragon that barely blocked the wind god spear with disbelief. They didn't expect Zhuowen to really block Zhuo Tian's 3rd move. Can he really block it? Zhuo Tian's long hair fluttered in the wind as he coldly looked at Zhuowen. Both of his hands moved slightly, and the wind god spear above the plaza buzzed. Suddenly, like a rainbow piercing through the sun, the wind god spear shattered the 4th giant dragon that was struggling on the verge of death. Then, it fiercely flew towards Zhuowen. Pfff! Zhuowen spat out another mouthful of blood, and retreated a dozen steps. However, what made everyone feel strange was that Zhuowen didn't show the slightest frustration on his face. Instead, he looked up to the sky and laughed. That's the feeling. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of understanding. Then, Zhuowen closed his eyes, and at the same time, his fists suddenly formed a strange trajectory. A strange energy gradually emitted from Zhuowen's body, and this strange energy wrapped around Zhuowen like a cocoon. Whoosh! The huge wind god spear flew towards Zhuowen, and just when everyone thought that Zhuowen would die under the wind god spear, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a cold look in his eyes. Primeval Dragon Roar Fist, 5 Dragon Roar. Roar! A dragon roar that sounded like it came from ancient times suddenly came from Zhuowen's body. Then, a giant dragon that was even bigger than the previous 4 giant dragons suddenly appeared in front of Zhuowen. The giant dragon roared, and its huge dragon eyes coldly stared at the wind god spear that was shooting towards it. Then, it actually flew across the sky and pounced towards it. Bang! When the two collided, a 5-colored brilliance exploded like fireworks. Then, everyone realized that the giant dragon and the wind god spear above the plaza had been completely destroyed. In the end, Zhuowen actually managed to survive Zhuo Tian's 3rd attack. When everyone realized this, their faces revealed very interesting expressions. When everyone came back to their senses and focused their gazes on Zhuowen, they were shocked to find that Zhuowen had suddenly closed his eyes again. The strange energy that was like a cocoon on Zhuowen's body had become even denser at this moment. Moreover, the yuan qi in the surroundings of the plaza had suddenly started to boil like boiling water, gathering above Zhuowen's head. A strong wave of energy rose above the plaza, and this wave of energy even scattered the clouds thousands of miles above the plaza. When this wave of energy appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of some of the experts hidden in the inner courtyard of the Zhuo family. Even the experts of the other forces in Rattan Armor City raised their heads to look in the direction of the Zhuo family, and their faces revealed shocked expressions. Chapter 22. Advanced to the vigorous viscera stage. Zhuowen's strange state attracted the attention of everyone in the square. Although many people didn't know what was going on, they were certain that Zhuowen's current state was beneficial to him. This was because they could clearly feel the surging yuan qi around Zhuowen's body constantly converging into Zhuowen's body. With the continuous influx of yuan qi, the aura in Zhuowen's body grew stronger. Could this be the profound comprehending stage? Zhuo Meishue, whose face had turned slightly gloomy because Zhuowen had blocked 3 of Zhuo Tian's moves, had a look of disbelief in her beautiful eyes as she involuntarily cried out. Profound comprehending stage? What's that? Zhuo Xiong'er asked with a frown. She didn't expect Zhuo Meishue to make such a fuss. I've only heard about it from my grandfather. I'm not too sure about the specifics. It's said that the mystic comprehending realm is a mysterious realm. Once a martial artist enters this mysterious realm, they will trigger the laws of heaven and earth. Once a martial artist enters this realm, whether its comprehension or yuan qi affinity, they will increase exponentially. That is to say, cultivators who enter the profound comprehending stage will have their cultivation speed increase by thousands of times. Some experts who have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation yearn to enter the profound comprehending stage because once they enter this realm, they will be able to break through the bottleneck without a hitch. However, I've heard from my grandfather that only cultivators who have reached the corporeal yang stage can enter the profound comprehending stage. This guy is only in the divine veiler stage, but his talent is so monstrous. Zhuo Meishuo looked at the tall figure in the square with a strange gaze. For a moment, her heart was filled with complicated feelings. Although she believed that her talent was strong enough, compared to Zhuoan, her talent paled in comparison. Zhuo Xiong'er's beautiful eyes looked strangely at Zhuo Meishuo, who had a complicated expression on her face. Based on her understanding of Zhuo Meishuo would never praise others. Even to Zhuo Tian, who had the highest cultivation, Zhuo Meishuo had never praised him. However, she actually gave such high praise to a young man she had just met. Zhuo Xiong'er could feel that Zhuo Meishuo's words were sincere. Is this rude guy really that powerful? Let's not talk about this for now. I've won the bet between us. Zhuo Meishuo, your Vajra ring is now mine. The corners of Zhuo Xiong'er's mouth twitched as her beautiful eyes looked craftily at Zhuo Meishuo as she gloated. When Zhuo Meishuo heard this, the corner of her mouth twitched. She waved her arm and took out a golden crystal from her bosom. It was the first-grade defensive crystal, the Vajra ring, that Zhuo Meishuo had used as a bet. I misjudged Zhuowen's strength and potential. Take this origin crystal. Zhuo Meishuo's pretty face revealed an extremely pained expression. Biting her lower lip with her pearly white teeth, she finally handed the crystal over to Zhuo Xiong'er. Receiving the crystals, Zhuo Xiong'er's face couldn't help but reveal a happy expression. Crystals were considered rare items in Rattan Armor City. Even though she was a core disciple of the Zhuo family, she didn't have many crystals in her possession. From this, one could see how precious crystals were. Rumble. A loud roar rang out, immediately attracting the attention of everyone in the plaza. When these gazes gathered on the plaza, everyone discovered that Zhuoan had unknowingly made a breakthrough. Countless amounts of yuan qi continuously rushed into Zhuoan's body like a stream flowing into the ocean. Under the baptism of this powerful yuan qi, crackling sounds continuously rang out from within Zhuoan's body. A powerful aura suddenly swept out from within Zhuoan's body, forming a yuan qi whirlwind in the plaza. Vigorous Viscera stage? Zhuoan actually broke through to the Vigorous Viscera stage under such circumstances. The Hidden Dragon Guard's commander, Zhuo Hanzhong, who was originally standing at the front of the crowd, tightly clenched his hands. His face was rather pale as he looked at the tall and straight figure in the plaza. The corners of his mouth trembled as he spoke. The yuan qi of heaven and earth is still unceasingly entering Zhuoan's body. The yuan qi in Zhuoan's body seems to be continuously increasing. Could it be that Zhuoan is going to make another breakthrough? After Zhuoan broke through to the Vigorous Viscera stage, some of the sharp-eyed people in the crowd discovered that the yuan qi surrounding Zhuoan's body did not have the slightest intention of dissipating. Instead, it seemed to be increasing in intensity. With this discovery, everyone's face revealed an expression of shock. Profound understanding stage. How could this bastard Zhuoan have reached such a profound stage? No, I definitely cannot let him break through. I must make him withdraw from the profound understanding stage. At this moment, Zhuo Tian's face was extremely gloomy. After his eyes flickered for a moment, he actually took out the wind god's spear in front of everyone's eyes. His lower dantian bulged, and a surge of yuan qi immediately poured into the wind god's spear. Rumble. An explosion sounded out of nowhere, and the wind god's spear once again transformed into a gigantic spear shadow. A trace of malevolence flashed across Zhuo Tian's eyes. With a twist of his hands, the wind god's spear immediately shot towards Zhuoan like an arrow leaving the bow. Zhuo Tian, you're despicable. Zhuo Xiong'er also discovered that Zhuo Tian had released the wind god's spear with all his strength. Her charming face changed as she shouted. Although Zhuo Xiong did not have a good impression of Zhuowen, his victory had allowed her to win a precious first-grade crystal. Moreover, Zhuowen's actions of taking advantage of others' difficulties were already despicable. Following Zhuo Xiong's words, the faces of the people in the plaza more or less carried traces of disdain and indignation. It was obvious that they despised Zhuo Tian's despicable actions. Zhuo Tian coldly snorted. Not only did he not stop the attack of the wind god's spear, but he also clenched his fists and kicked off with his legs. His entire body shot towards Zhuo when like a cannonball. A huge shadow of a ferocious tiger appeared behind him. He had actually used the ferocious tiger fist even more ferociously. Seeing Zhuo Tian's shameless actions, many people in the plaza could not help but secretly curse. Zhuo Tian's actions had indeed aroused public indignation. However, to everyone's astonishment, a blood-curdling scream rang out as a figure was sent flying backwards like a broken leaf. In the end, the figure fell miserably at the bottom of the plaza. When the crowd looked over, they discovered that the person who had fallen to the ground was actually Zhuo Tian, who had attacked Zhuo Tian. At this moment, Zhuo Tian's complexion was extremely pale. His originally fierce eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked at Zhuowen on the plaza. The wind god's spear, which was originally full of power, suddenly stopped when it was 10 feet away from Zhuowen. Then, it unexpectedly collapsed and dissipated inch by inch on its own. It was as if there was a strange energy within 10 feet of Zhuowen. This strange energy seemed to be protecting Zhuowen. If an expert saw this scene, they would definitely curse Zhuo Tian's stupidity. This was because once a cultivator was lucky enough to enter the profound understanding realm, they would be protected by the laws of heaven and earth. If anyone was blind enough to attack a cultivator who had entered the profound understanding realm, they would definitely receive a backlash from the laws of heaven and earth. If it were not for the fact that Zhuowen's realm was not high enough, the laws of heaven and earth that he formed would not be strong. Just the backlash from the laws of heaven and earth would be enough to kill him, and he would not only be heavily injured. Perhaps due to the effect of Zhuowen's attack, Zhuowen, who had his eyes tightly shut, suddenly opened them. His gaze was slightly dazed as he looked around. In the end, his gaze locked onto Zhuo Tian, who had fallen to the side of the plaza. Zhuowen remembered that after he had blocked Zhuo Tian's third attack, he had entered an indescribable state. In this state, Zhuowen could feel his soul and the elemental energy in his body growing at a terrifying rate. In just a short while, his cultivation had broken through to the viscera strengthening stage. Moreover, Zhuowen could clearly feel that in that strange realm, the flow of time was extremely slow. Just a short while ago, Zhuowen felt as if 10 years had passed. If Zhuowen had not felt a slight vibration from the outside world, he would not have exited that mysterious realm just now. After secretly sighing in his heart, Zhuowen looked coldly at Zhuo Tian. He walked up to the latter and said indifferently, "Zhuo Tian, I won our bet, so it's time for you to fulfill your promise." As soon as Zhuowen said this, all eyes in the plaza gathered on Zhuo Tian. Everyone wanted to know if Zhuo Tian would fulfill his promise. At this moment, Zhuo Tian's gaze was extremely gloomy. A trace of humiliation flashed across his resolute face. He coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood and gritted his teeth. "If you want me to kowtow to you, I'd rather die. I'm willing to use 2 vermilion fire dragon fruits in exchange for 3 kowtows. How about it?" Zhuo Tian was arrogant by nature. If he had to kowtow to someone, he would rather die. Grade 1 vermilion fire dragon fruit? When Zhuowen heard this, his eyes flashed. The heavenly armor continent did not have the art of alchemy. If a cultivator wanted to increase their cultivation, they could only use vermilion fire dragon herbs to increase their cultivation. Vermilion fire dragon herbs were derived from the heaven and earth and contained yuan qi. The yuan qi in vermilion fire dragon herbs was much denser than in the air, and it was easier for the human body to absorb. This was also why vermilion fire dragon herbs could increase one's cultivation quickly. Vermilion fire dragon herbs were divided into grades 1 to 10. Grade 1 was the worst, and grade 10 was the best. It was said that grade 10 vermilion fire dragon herbs had a certain level of intelligence. This kind of fire dragon herb was almost impossible to find because once a fire dragon herb had intelligence, it would know how to hide itself. If the fire dragon herb did not come out to find you, you would never be able to find a grade 10 fire dragon herb. Grade 1 fire dragon herbs were very precious in the Zhuo family. Zhuowen did not expect Zhuo Tian to be willing to take out 2 grade 1 vermilion fire dragon fruits. This really surprised Zhuowen. After pondering for a while, Zhuowen nodded slightly. He then stretched out his hand and said, "Then give it to me. Don't forget the 10,000 yuan." The corner of Zhuo Tian's eyes twitched. He took out a palm-sized bag from his chest and opened it to take out 2 fiery red fruits. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that the fiery red fruit in Zhuo Tian's hand was the vermilion fire dragon fruit. After taking the vermilion fire dragon fruit, Zhuowen could clearly feel the huge amount of yuan qi that was faintly emitted from its surface. "Cousin Zhuowen, I don't have 10,000 yuan on me. How about this? When I return to the Black Dragon Pavilion, I'll give you the 10,000 yuan tomorrow. How about that?" Zhuo Tian said awkwardly after fumbling around in the bag for a long time. Chapter 23. Monstrous talent. Hearing this, Zhuo Tian's expression changed greatly. With a cold tone, he said, "As the pavilion master of the Black Dragon Pavilion, would I go back on my word? I only care about my current interests. Now you only have 2 choices. Either leave the Chenkuan bag behind or leave your life behind." Zhuowen looked at Zhuo Tian coldly as his lips curved into a mocking smile. Hearing this, Zhuo Tian was furious. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said hatefully, "If I hadn't been injured by the laws of heaven and earth, even if you've reached the strengthened organs stage, how could you be my opponent? Take the Chenkuan bag. I, Zhuo Tian, will remember today's grudge. You won't be as lucky in the competition 3 months from now." After Zhuo Tian threw the Chenkuan bag to Zhuowen, he turned around and left without looking back. Everyone in the plaza saw Zhuo Tian leave with his tail between his legs. They didn't think that the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master, Zhuo Tian, who was known as the #1 person in the inner court, couldn't do anything to the new pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. For a moment, the plaza was in an uproar. And the story of Zhuowen, who was only in the divine veiler stage, stopping Zhuo Tian, who was at the pinnacle of the spirit detecting stage, made everyone feel that it was unreal. Originally, the people in the plaza weren't very interested in Zhuowen being the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, but because of this battle, they were truly convinced by Zhuowen. In particular, a portion of the crowd were hidden dragon guards. These hidden dragon guards' eyes were filled with fanaticism and reverence. This battle allowed them to see the limitless potential of this young pavilion master. As long as this young man was given enough time, their Veiled Dragon Pavilion's position in the inner court would be unshakable. Pavilion Master is valiant. Pavilion Master is valiant. For a moment, the 100 or so hidden dragon guards in the plaza looked at Zhuowen with fanaticism. They all knelt on one knee and placed their right hand on their left chest. The hidden dragon guard's current posture was the highest form of loyalty to their master. For all of the hidden dragon guards to perform this gesture of loyalty, it meant that the hidden dragon guards had truly recognized Zhuowen as the pavilion master. Nearly 100 hidden dragon guards knelt down on one knee and cheered in unison. Their loud cheers spread across the entire plaza. This scene was quite spectacular. Zhuowen was slightly startled. He had not expected that he would obtain the loyalty of the hidden dragon guards after winning the battle. This was something that Zhuowen had not expected. This guy is really a freak. The hidden dragon guards of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion are the most bad-tempered guards in the inner court. I've never seen the hidden dragon guards truly submit to the previous pavilion masters. However, this guy has only been the pavilion master of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion for 3 days, and the hidden dragon guards are actually so loyal to him. I really don't know what's so good about this guy. Zhuo Xiong was also shocked by the actions of nearly 100 hidden dragon guards. However, the corners of her mouth twitched as she looked at the calm young man in the square with displeasure. A powerhouse is destined to be revered by others. Since Zhuowen is able to enter the mystic comprehending stage that all martial artists dream of, it means that he's extremely talented. Zhuo Meishue said nonchalantly as she looked at Zhuowen's silhouette with her beautiful eyes. At this moment, a few powerful auras suddenly came from the sky above the plaza. Then, 4 figures suddenly landed on the plaza. Among the 4 people, there were 3 that Zhuowen knew. They were the family head, Zhuo Xiangding, Zhuowen's first uncle, Zhuo Beitian, and second uncle, Zhuo Dingtian. The last person was an old man with turbid eyes and a smile on his face. After the 4 people landed on the plaza, they immediately caused an uproar. These 4 people were the 4 most powerful people in the Zhuo family. It was very rare to see them. Beitian, you really didn't trigger the law of heaven and earth just now? As soon as Zhuo Xiangding landed on the plaza, his eyes frowned as he looked at Zhuo Beitian, who was dressed in green, not far away. Zhuo Beitian smiled bitterly and said, "Father, I thought you were the one who entered the mystic comprehending stage. How is that possible? In the Zhuo family, only you and I are at the corporeal yang stage. Only martial artists at the corporeal yang stage and above can comprehend the mystic comprehending stage. Since it's not you and me, who else in the Zhuo family is qualified to enter the mystic comprehending stage?" Zhuo Xiangding said with a frown. "Family head. Since this is the place where the law of heaven and earth occurs, the person who entered the mystic comprehending stage should be here. We can ask others what happened just now," the old man who had been smiling suddenly said. "Father. Grandfather." As soon as the smiling old man finished speaking, 2 crisp voices suddenly sounded. Then, 2 beautiful figures suddenly appeared beside Zhuo Beitian and the smiling old man. "Xiong, why are you here?" Zhuo Beitian looked at his daughter with a strange gaze and said in a gentle tone. The old man also stretched out his withered right hand and gently rubbed Zhuo Meishua's soft hair. His wrinkled face revealed a loving expression. "We're here to see the new pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. I'd like to see what kind of person the family head bestowed to the Veiled Dragon Pavilion is," Zhuo Meishue answered before Zhuo Xiong'er could explain. Zhuo Meishue's words also caused Zhuo Wen's inconspicuous figure in the plaza to attract the attention of the 4 people. At this moment, Zhuo Wen's expression was calm as he looked at the 4 people. He had no intention of coming over to chat. Family head. This must be the little guy with the triple armor soul. He seems to be in good spirits, but he's a little arrogant. He didn't even come over to greet us 4 elders. The old man who had been smiling all along said with slight displeasure when he saw Zhuowen's standing figure. "He's young. It's normal for him to be a little arrogant. Moreover, I'm also a little incompetent as a grandfather. I haven't cared for him for so many years. It's normal for him not to get close to an old man like me." Zhuo Xiangding didn't seem to mind and said with a smile. "That's right. Girl, you should be in this square just now, right? Did you see what happened in the square just now?" Zhuo Xiangding suddenly looked at the 2 women in front of him with a serious expression and said in a serious tone. "You're talking about the change in the laws of heaven and earth caused by the profound comprehending stage. Of course we know about this. Just now, Zhuowen entered the profound comprehending stage and caused the laws of heaven and earth to be activated. Moreover, that guy broke through to the vigorous viscera stage because of this." Zhuo Xiong'er's thoughts were simple. When she heard Zhuo Xiangding's question, she immediately pointed at Zhuowen and said. When Zhuo Xiong'er said this, the 4 people suddenly fell into silence. "Girl, do you know what the profound comprehending stage is? To enter the profound comprehending stage, one needs to be at least at the corporeal yang stage. Zhuowen's cultivation is only at the vigorous viscera stage. How could he enter the profound comprehending stage?" Zhuo Xiangding looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. His tone became very serious, which was rare for him. "That's right. Xiong'er, you can't speak nonsense," Zhuo Beitian also said with a serious gaze. "Zhuo Xiong'er is speaking the truth. Zhuowen did enter the profound comprehending stage just now. If you don't believe me, you can ask the others in the square. Although the others don't know about the profound comprehending stage, they all know about the strange phenomenon caused by Zhuowen," Zhuo Meishue suddenly said. After Zhuo Meishue finished speaking, Zhuo Xiangding and the other 3 people fell into silence again. If it was only Zhuo Xiong'er's words, the 4 of them might not believe it. However, since the prudent Zhuo Meishue also said the same thing, they had no choice but to be cautious. Zhuo Xiangding's hands were trembling. If what the 2 women said was true, then Zhuowen's talent was really too terrifying. To be able to enter the profound comprehending stage without even reaching the corporeal yang stage, this kind of talent was almost monstrous. Zhuo Xiangding's figure flashed and arrived in front of Zhuowen. There was a faint excitement in his eyes as he asked, "Zhuowen, did you just enter the profound comprehending stage and cause the laws of heaven and earth?" Zhuowen was startled. He didn't understand why Zhuo Xiangding was so excited. He subconsciously said, "The wonderful stage just now is called the profound comprehending stage. This name is quite appropriate. I did enter that mysterious stage by accident." Zhuo Dingtian's mind suddenly buzzed and his whole body couldn't help but tremble. Two big hands gently patted Zhuowen's shoulders and said with an excited expression, "Good job. You are indeed the son of the third brother. If your father knew that you have such talent, he would be very pleased." The other three people who came later obviously heard Zhuo Xiangding's words and were all stunned. Zhuo Beitian's face showed a trace of gratification and joy, while Zhuo Dingtian's expression was gloomy. As for the smiling old man, his eyes were full of shock. "Ha ha. Zhuowen, your cultivation has now reached the vigorous viscera stage, right? It is the fortune of the family that you have such talent. In the future, you can take the family's resources as much as you want. This is my waste token. With this waste token in hand, it is equivalent to the presence of the head of the family. If you want any resources, take this waste token and no one will stop you." Zhuo Xiangding laughed and took off a jade token from his waist. He handed it to Zhuowen with a solemn expression. When Zhuo Beitian and the others saw that Zhuo Xiangding had actually handed over his identity token to Zhuo Wen, their faces were filled with shock. The identity token of the patriarch was incomparable to the one that Zhuo Xiangding had given to Zhuo Wen last time. The function of the family token could only ensure that Zhuowen could freely enter and leave the inner courtyard. However, the family head token was a personal keepsake of the family head. This keepsake contained a part of the family head's authority. With this keepsake, Zhuowen could enter some important places in the family. Most importantly, the family head token was the proof of the family head. Since Zhuo Xiangding had handed over the family head token to Zhuowen, it meant that Zhuowen had become the candidate for the next family head. It was because of this reason that Zhuo Xiangding and the others were shocked. They didn't expect that Zhuo Xiangding would appoint Zhuowen as the next family head so early. It could be seen how much Zhuo Xiangding valued Zhuowen. Chapter 24. Rise to fame. As night fell, the bustling square of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion gradually quieted down. Zhuowen closed the door after returning to the training room and told Liu Dao not to disturb him unless there was something important. After the battle in the square, Zhuowen's fame in the inner court had spread. As a divine Veiler stage martial artist, he had taken 3 moves from Zhuo Tian, who was 2 realms higher than him. Zhuo Tian had even suffered some losses at the hands of Zhuowen. Such a great battle record was quickly spread by the spectators. In this manner, the unfamiliar name of Zhuo Wen gradually became a hot topic within the Inner Academy. Even some of the Inner Academy core disciples with low cultivations had not seen Zhuo Wen before, but they began to fear this new pavilion chief of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion who had just joined the Inner Academy. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Zhuowen waved his right hand and took out the Chenkuan bag he had obtained from Zhuo Tian. His eyes flickered as he impatiently opened the Chenkuan bag. Zhuo Tian's Chenkuan bag was a low-level Chenkuan bag with only about 10 square meters of space. Even though it was a low-level Chenkuan bag, there were very few people in the inner court who could own one. If it was taken out for auction, it could be sold for at least 20,000 yuan. Zhuowen could be considered to have profited greatly from this. I wonder what kind of expression Zhuo Dingtian would have if he knew that his son had lost the Chenkuan bag to me. Zhuowen gloated and took out 2 fire dragon vermilion fruits from the Chenkuan bag. Naturally, these 2 fire dragon vermilion fruits were also won from Zhuo Tian. Apart from the 2 fire dragon vermilion fruits, there were also 5,000 yuan in the Chenkuan bag. It could be said that Zhuowen had profited greatly from this battle. There is no alchemy technique in the Heavenly Armor continent. Cultivation and healing are all done by using elixirs. I wonder if my Jade Cauldron Armored Soul can condense these Fire Dragon Vermilion fruits into elixirs? Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he suddenly remembered that the jade tripod armor soul could condense the essence of a human body into blood essence pills. Could it also condense elixirs? After all, although the medicinal efficacy of the elixir was astonishing, there were still many impurities in it. These impurities were difficult for the human body to absorb, and if they were to remain in the human body, there would be no small side effects. However, when condensed into elixirs, there was no need to worry about impurities. The elixir itself was the condensation of essence, and there would be no impurities in it at all. Thinking of this, Zhuowen couldn't help but want to give it a try. Therefore, Zhuowen immediately summoned the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul and threw a Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit into the Jade Cauldron. What surprised Zhuowen was that when the Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit entered the Jade Cauldron reacted. A strange energy suddenly filled the Jade Cauldron, and Zhuowen saw that the Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit that was thrown into the Jade Cauldron was gradually decomposing into liquid. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that as the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul continued to decompose the Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit, Zhuowen found that the Yuan energy in his body was also slowly being absorbed by the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul. Obviously, the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul needed the Yuan energy in Zhuowen's body to support it in decomposing the elixir. After about 1/4 of the Yuan energy in Zhuowen's body was absorbed, the Jade Cauldron buzzed, and suddenly, 4 fiery red round elixirs were spat out from the mouth of the cauldron. Fire Dragon Elixir, transformed from the essence of the Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit. 1 elixir is equivalent to 1 Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit. It is a common grade 5 elixir. After Zhuowen caught the Fire Dragon Elixir, the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul also gave him an introduction about the Fire Dragon Elixir. When Zhuowen saw that the Fire Dragon Elixir was equivalent to 1 Fire Dragon Vermilion Fruit, even if Zhuowen was very calm, he couldn't help but be shocked. If this information was true, then as long as Zhuowen had a first-grade elixir, he could refine 4 elixirs that were equivalent to a first-grade elixir without any impurities. With this discovery, Zhuowen's eyes couldn't help but become fiery, and he became even more curious about the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul. This mysterious Jade Cauldron Armor Soul was really out of Zhuowen's expectations. Moreover, Zhuowen could feel that the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul's ability wasn't limited to this, but he hadn't fully explored it yet. Although Zhuowen wasn't very clear about the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, Zhuowen had a little summary of the abilities that the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul had shown so far. First, elixir recipes. The Jade Cauldron Armor Soul contained endless elixir recipes. With the evolution of the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, the level of the elixir recipes would continue to be unlocked. Second, alchemy. Using the herbs in the elixir recipes, one could refine elixirs with various functions. Third, condensation. Extracting the essence of living creatures and turning it into elixirs, such as Blood Essence Elixir and Fire Dragon Elixir. The former was an elixir condensed from the essence of the human body, while the latter was condensed from the essence of the elixir. Since I have a preliminary understanding of the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul's ability, the next step is to use the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul to improve my strength. With such a heaven-defying auxiliary armor soul, I think my cultivation speed will definitely be several times or even dozens of times faster than others. In these 3 months, I am very confident that I can surpass Zhuotian. When the time comes, I will defeat him fair and square. However, the most important thing now is to get a fire attribute cultivation method. I will go to the cultivation method pavilion tomorrow to have a look. Having said that, Zhuowen took out a Fire Dragon Elixir and threw it into his mouth. Then, he closed his eyes and began to silently refine the medicinal power of the Fire Dragon Elixir. Now that Zhuowen had just entered the Viscera Strengthening Realm, he had to calm down and stabilize his mind. In one of the attics in the inner yard, Zhuo Dingtian looked at Zhuowen, who was standing in front of him with his head lowered, and said in a gloomy voice, "You said that you had a 3-move bet with Zhuowen. Not only did Zhuowen survive the 3 moves, but he also used you as a stepping stone to finally break through." Zhuotian didn't dare to look at Zhuo Dingtian. He smiled bitterly and said, "Father, if he had not suddenly entered the mystic comprehending realm, I would have killed him long ago. I can't accept this." Zhuo Dingtian's gaze softened as he looked at the unwilling Zhuotian. Finally, he sighed and said, "Zhuo Wen's talent is indeed monstrous. Not only was he born with triplet armor souls, but he has also entered the profound comprehending state at such a young age. Even his father could not compare to his talent. If he continues to develop, he will surpass you one day. Moreover, your grandfather has already given the patriarch's keepsake to Zhuowen at the square. What? Grandfather gave the keepsake to that bastard Zhuowen? Father, didn't you say that grandfather was going to give me the patriarch's keepsake? Moreover, wasn't I chosen by grandfather to be the next patriarch? Hearing this, Zhuo Tian's face turned as pale as snow. His fierce eyes were filled with unwillingness and resentment. If that bastard Zhuowen had not appeared, you would have been the next patriarch. However, Zhuowen's performance was too outstanding, so your grandfather naturally placed more hope on Zhuowen. However, you still have a chance. Zhuo Dingtian said calmly. Zhuo Tian cupped his hands and said, please give me some pointers. The clan competition in 3 months is your only chance. If you can completely defeat Zhuo Wen in the clan competition and let everyone in the Zhuo clan know that you are the #1 person in the inner academy, then your prestige will definitely surpass Zhuo Wen's. Perhaps your grandfather will change his mind and choose you as the next head of the clan because of this. Zhuo Dingtian said as he looked at Zhuo Tian. Father, don't worry, I'm already at the peak of the spirit detecting realm, and Zhuowen is only at the vigorous viscera realm. If we fight head-on, Zhuowen is definitely not my match. At that time, I'll let everyone in the family know who is the strongest in the inner court. Zhuo Tian said with a ferocious expression. Zhuo Dingtian shook his head and took out a blood-red crystal. Zhuowen's talent is top-notch. Perhaps he will have a breakthrough in the next 3 months. I can feel that he has some hidden cards, so don't let your guard down. This is a grade 1 origin crystal, the blood chi crystal. It can temporarily increase your strength, but the side effects are too great. It's best not to use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Taking the blood chi crystal, Zhuo Tian was touched. His father had sacrificed a lot for him to become the head of the family. Even now, he was still trying his best to help him. Father, I won't let you down. The Zhuo family's patriarch position will definitely be mine. Zhuo Tian bowed and said with a serious expression. Get up. I'm already satisfied that you have this kind of heart. Cultivate well for the next 3 months. We still have some elixirs in storage. Take them all to cultivate. If you can break through to the soul-changing realm in the next 3 months, then you won't need to use the blood chi crystal. No matter how heaven-defying Zhuowen is, he won't be your match after you enter the soul-changing realm. Zhuo Dingtian smiled and helped Zhuo Tian up. His eyes were filled with love. I'll work hard. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight passed through the curtains and landed on the young man's delicate face, the young man slowly opened his eyes. A ray of light suddenly emerged from the young man's eyes. The fire dragon pill is indeed a grade 1 elixir. After taking the fire dragon pill, not only has my cultivation completely stabilized, but the elemental energy in my body has also faintly increased. Zhuowen said with a refreshed expression as he pushed himself up with his right hand. It's time to go take a look at the technique pavilion. Now that I have the patriarch's token on me, it should be enough to qualify me to enter such an important place like the technique pavilion. Zhuowen felt his body brimming with energy, and his entire being felt refreshed. The most important characteristic of the vigorous viscera stage was that the yuan power in the body would gradually transform the internal organs, causing the fragile internal organs to become even more resilient. Furthermore, the 5 senses of a martial artist would also become more sensitive and clear. Feeling the changes in his body, Zhuowen's face revealed a satisfied expression. He then stepped out of the technique pavilion. As soon as he stepped out of the door, the 2 hidden dragon guards in front of the door hurriedly saluted Zhuowen. Their faces were filled with fanaticism and reverence. Clearly, because of the bet between Zhuowen and Zhuo Tian yesterday, Zhuowen's prestige in the hidden dragon pavilion had increased infinitely. Zhuowen slightly nodded as a response. He then walked quickly into the hidden dragon pavilion's main hall. In the main hall, Liu Dao was directing some servants to renovate the hall. Liu Dao obviously also noticed the sudden appearance of Zhuowen. His face immediately revealed a joyful expression. He hurriedly came in front of Zhuowen and said with a respectful expression, "Master, what's the matter?" Chapter 25. To turn a farce into a reality under Liu Dao's lead, Zhuowen quickly saw the cultivation method pavilion that stood in the depths of the inner court. The cultivation method pavilion's appearance was very similar to a pagoda, but it didn't have as many levels as a pagoda. Moreover, it occupied a very vast area. "Young master, the cultivation method chamber is right in front of us. The Zhuo family's cultivation method chamber is an important place. I'm not allowed to enter." When they were 100 meters away from the cultivation method pavilion, Liu Dao suddenly stopped and said apologetically. Zhuowen was stunned. Indeed, there were many guards outside the cultivation method pavilion. Moreover, from the aura that these guards gave off, they had all reached the divine Veiler realm. Their quality was no weaker than the hidden dragon guards. However, after thinking about it for a while, Zhuowen also revealed a look of understanding. Cultivation techniques were the foundation of a clan. The higher the level of the cultivation technique, the deeper the foundation of the clan. Cultivation techniques were so important that they were naturally guarded very strictly. "I got it. You can go back first." Zhuowen waved at Liu Dao, then walked towards the cultivation method pavilion. The guards outside the cultivation method pavilion also saw Zhuowen walking over. However, when they saw that Zhuowen was wearing the core disciple's uniform, they acted as if nothing had happened and continued their patrol. As soon as he stepped into the cultivation method pavilion, Zhuowen could feel that the yuan qi inside the cultivation method pavilion seemed to be denser than outside. A strange expression immediately appeared on his face. "It's strange, the origin qi here is denser than outside." Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice rang in Zhuowen's ears. Turning his head, Zhuowen saw Zhuo Xiong looking at him with a smile on her face. Her big watery eyes contained a trace of craftiness. "You must really want to know, but I won't tell you." Zhuo Xiong giggled, her eyes turning into crescent moons. The craftiness in her eyes became even more intense. "Oh," Zhuowen replied indifferently. He then ignored Zhuo Xiong, who was beside him, and walked straight to the center of the cultivation method pavilion. Rows of bookshelves were erected in the center of the pavilion. Many bamboo slips were placed in the middle of the bookshelves. Zhuowen knew that these bamboo slips should be the cultivation method manuals of the pavilion. At this moment, there were many young disciples reading the bamboo slips on the bookshelves in the center of the pavilion. Zhuo Xiong also didn't expect that Zhuowen would ignore her. She was stunned for a moment, then she flew into a rage out of humiliation and shouted, "You! Stop!" Frowning slightly, Zhuowen did not expect Zhuo Xiong to be so unruly. He did not feel it at first, but ever since he had brushed her off in the square, she had been looking for trouble. Zhuo Xiong's shout attracted the attention of many disciples in the cultivation method pavilion. When many of them saw Zhuo Xiong, an uproar broke out, and a trace of amazement appeared in their eyes. Some of them even looked at Zhuo Xiong with infatuation. Although Zhuo Xiong was still young, she had developed quite well. Her face was as delicate as porcelain, making people unable to resist pinching it. When these disciples saw Zhuo Xiong standing in front of a youth in anger, many of them stared at the latter with eyes that were spitting fire. Their eyes were filled with deep jealousy, as if they wished they could replace that youth. Zhuowen could also feel that many gazes within the cultivation method pavilion were focused on him. He sighed softly in his heart as he helplessly looked at the young lady in front of him and said, "Is something the matter?" Zhuo Xiong was originally a little angry because of Zhuowen's previous performance. But now, when she saw the helpless expression on Zhuowen's face, she secretly regretted that she had actually found trouble and blocked his path. For a moment, a faint blush appeared on her pretty face. "Sister Xiong, who was this person? How dare you be so rude?" A young man dressed in luxurious blue clothes stood in front of Zhuowen. His somewhat handsome face was filled with disdain as he looked at Zhuowen. When he discovered that Zhuowen seemed to be a stranger, the disdain in his eyes became even more intense. Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to such a lustful fellow. He glanced at the young man and was about to rush past him. Zhuowen still had many things to do, so he didn't want to waste too much time here. However, just as Zhuowen was about to pass by, he felt a resistance coming from his right hand. Then, he discovered that his right hand was being hugged by someone. When he turned his head, he discovered that Zhuo Xiong was hugging his right hand tightly. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disgust as she looked at the blue-clothed young man in front of her. What does his rudeness have to do with you? Don't bother me in the future. I already have someone I like. After Zhuo Xiong finished speaking, her beautiful eyes flickered with a hint of craftiness. At the same time, she looked at the gloomy Zhuowen provocatively. Looking at the ugly expression of the blue-clothed young man in front of him, Zhuowen didn't need to guess to know that the young man in front of him was Zhuo Xiong's suitor. Moreover, he should be the type who would pester her. Zhuo Xiong's action was obviously using Zhuowen as a shield. Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt somewhat unhappy. Just as he was about to break free from Zhuo Xiong's grasp, the blue-clothed young man looked at Zhuowen with bloodshot eyes and said in a sinister tone, "Brat. You've got guts. You actually dare to have ideas about Xiong. You should know that people like you don't live for long. If you know what's good for you, you might be able to live a little longer." Zhuowen wrinkled his brows. He didn't expect the young man in front of him to be so narrow-minded. He even dared to threaten him. Zhuowen hated it the most when others threatened him. You don't need to have any ideas. Xiong is already mine. I think you should just give up. Since you want to act, I'll play along with you. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly. He pulled Zhuo Xiong into his embrace and looked at the blue-clothed young man with a slightly provocative gaze. Originally, Zhuo Xiong only hugged Zhuowen's right hand to make the blue-clothed young man give up. She didn't expect that Zhuowen would actually make the act real. Although she wanted to break free from his embrace, Zhuowen's hands were like iron hoops that firmly held her body, making it difficult for her to move. As soon as Zhuowen's words came out, the technique pavilion suddenly became incomparably silent. Everyone inside was looking at the two people in an ambiguous position with strange gazes. The others were somewhat flabbergasted. Zhuo Xiong was only about 14 years old. Wasn't it a little too fast for her to do that? Zhuo Xiong also felt the strange gazes from the people in the technique pavilion. Her heart was suddenly filled with both shame and anger. She wanted to break free from Zhuowen's embrace, but Zhuowen held her very tightly. Moreover, she felt the strong masculine aura coming from Zhuowen's body, which made the inexperienced Zhuo Xiong's maiden heart beat wildly. She couldn't help but lose some of her strength, and her struggling turned into twisting and turning. The blue-clothed young man couldn't stand it any longer. He let out a fierce shout and directly threw a punch at Zhuowen. A powerful yuan power fluctuation suddenly swept towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression changed. He quietly let go of Zhuo Xiong and lightly punched out with his right hand. There was a trace of indifference on his face. With a miserable scream, the blue-clothed young man was sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell in the center of the technique pavilion's hall and struggled to get up. He could only look at Zhuowen with a pale face and a trace of disbelief in his eyes. When the others saw that the blue-clothed young man had been dealt with by Zhuowen in one move, they were all silent for a moment. The blue-clothed young man's strength had reached the viscera vigorous stage, but no one expected him to not even be able to withstand a single move from Zhuowen. This caused everyone in the technique pavilion to be unable to wrap their heads around the situation. When Zhuowen was in the divine veiler stage, he was able to block 3 moves from a spirit detecting stage cultivator. Now that he was in the viscera vigorous stage, his true battle strength had far surpassed the viscera vigorous stage. Moreover, the blue-clothed young man had just entered the viscera vigorous stage, so his aura was not stable yet. This was why Zhuowen was able to defeat him in one move. The commotion at Zhuowen's side also attracted the attention of other people who were further away in the pavilion. Soon after, some of the people who were talking noisily also crowded over, wanting to see exactly what was going on. For a moment, the pavilion became somewhat chaotic. Just when the pavilion was in a bit of a mess, an old voice suddenly rang out. Soon after, a white-haired old man in sackcloth brought a group of guards over to Zhuowen. It's actually the Technique Pavilion's law enforcement elder. It seems like that guy is in for some bad luck. The law enforcement elder's punishment is very severe. Seeing the old man in sackcloth arrive, the surrounding people all looked at Zhuowen with pity. It was obvious that this old man in sackcloth was not a kind person. When the old man saw the blue-clothed young man struggling on the ground, his eyes suddenly became gloomy. He looked around and shouted, "Who injured this person? Stand out." After the old man in sackcloth said this, the surrounding people all looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away. Many of them looked at him with a hint of schadenfreude. The old man in sackcloth also noticed the gazes of the crowd. Following these gazes, the old man quickly focused his attention on Zhuowen. He coldly snorted and said, "Did you injure this person? Don't you know that fighting is prohibited in the technique pavilion?" Zhuowen slightly cupped his hands. On the surface, he did not show the slightest neglect. He could feel the powerful aura of the old man in sackcloth. This old man was definitely a true Yin Void Realm warrior. It was this person who made the first move. If Senior doesn't believe me, you can ask everyone here. The old man in sackcloth slightly waved his right hand and coldly said, "I don't care who attacked first. Since you have already attacked, you must be punished. Now, take both of you down." Zhuowen slightly frowned. He did not expect the old man in sackcloth to be so unreasonable. He coldly snorted and took out the jade token given by Zhuo Xiangding from his interspatial bag. He said, "If I add this token, do you plan to arrest me too?" After seeing the jade token in Zhuowen's hand, the old man in sackcloth suddenly turned pale with fright and said, "Master's token? Are you Zhuowen, the new pavilion master of Hidden Dragon Pavilion?" Chapter 26. Lai Yangju, the hemp-clothed elder's expression changed again and again. In the end, he cupped his hands towards Zhuowen and said, "Since it is young Master Zhuowen, this old man will naturally not offend you. The head of the family has instructed that we must treat young Master Zhuowen with the utmost respect." Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect Zhuo Xiangding to be so considerate. This kind of attitude also caused the coldness in Zhuowen's heart to gradually melt a little. "May I know how to address you? And the matter just now?" Zhuowen cupped his hands slightly and his tone became slightly more polite. Since the hemp-clothed elder was so polite, Zhuowen naturally returned the favor. "Haha. Young Master Zhuowen only needs to call me Elder Qiao. This old man is the law-enforcing elder of the Cultivation Method Pavilion. As for the matter just now, this old man also knows that young Master Zhuowen is innocent. It was this little fellow who provoked you first." As he spoke, Elder Qiao waved his hand towards the guard behind him and said, "Take this little fellow away and punish him according to the family rules." After speaking, Elder Qiao looked at Zhuowen with a face full of joy and said, "Young Master Zhuowen should be here to choose a cultivation method, right? Perhaps this old man can help young Master a little in terms of cultivation method." Looking at the smiling Elder Qiao in front of him, Zhuowen knew that the elder in front of him had a huge change in attitude. The most important thing was that he had revealed Zhuo Xiangding's personal waste token. Obviously, this old man should also recognize the personal waste token in Zhuowen's hand and probably knew what it meant to possess this waste token. The sudden change in Elder Qiao's attitude also caused the other disciples in the Cultivation Method Pavilion to be confused. At the same time, they were also very surprised. As the law-enforcing elder of the Cultivation Method Pavilion, Elder Qiao's rude and unreasonable character was already known to everyone. As long as any disciple violated the rules in the Cultivation Method Pavilion, the law-enforcing elder would definitely not show any mercy. Now, Zhuowen, who had violated the rules, not only did not receive any punishment from the law-enforcing elder, but the law-enforcing elder even treated him with respect. This strange scene caused many of the disciples present to rub their eyes, thinking that they were hallucinating. In the Cultivation Method Pavilion, only Zhuo Xiong'er knew why the law enforcement elder's attitude had changed so drastically. She glared fiercely at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes, then stomped her foot and ran away like a child. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Zhuo Xiong'er's departure. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the rows of bookshelves in the center of the Cultivation Method Pavilion. He knew that the old man in front of him was the law enforcement elder of the Cultivation Method Pavilion, so he was very familiar with the cultivation methods and armor skills in the cultivation method pavilion. With the help of this person, Zhuowen could save a lot of time. Elder Qiao, I wonder if there are any fire attribute secret manuals in the pavilion? Zhuowen's eyes were slightly blazing as he spoke with a slightly fluctuating tone. Elder Qiao was stunned. After pondering for a while, he frowned and said, yes. However, the family's cultivation techniques are generally not of a high level. Among them, I remember that there is only a low-level cultivation technique called scorching sun extinction. Oh, it's only a low-level cultivation technique? Zhuowen frowned slightly. He didn't expect that such a large cultivation method pavilion would only have low-level fire attribute cultivation techniques. This made Zhuowen slightly shocked. Cultivation techniques were divided into 3 levels: low-level, mid-level, and high-level. The highest-level cultivation technique in the Zhuo family's collection was the mid-level cultivation technique, 3-foot wave. However, it was of the water attribute and had no effect on Zhuowen. Young Master Zhuowen, why don't you choose another one? Now that you have the Patriarch's Waste token, you are qualified to practice the family's highest-level cultivation technique, 3-foot wave. Elder Qiao tried his best to persuade him. Zhuowen shook his head slightly. Only he knew that if he wanted to cooperate with the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, he had to practice a fire attribute cultivation technique. Only then would he be able to use the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul to refine the elixir in the pill formula. Thank you for your kind intentions, Elder Qiao. Due to some reason, I need to practice a fire attribute cultivation technique. Since there are only low-level fire attribute cultivation techniques in the cultivation method pavilion, why don't you let me have a look? Elder Qiao looked at Zhuowen strangely. He was a little surprised that Zhuowen had the opportunity to practice a mid-level cultivation technique, but now he had given it up. This made Elder Qiao a little confused. However, since Zhuowen had already made up his mind, Elder Qiao naturally wouldn't say anything more. He nodded slightly and brought Zhuowen to a more remote bookshelf. With a casual wave of his hand, he took out a bamboo scroll. Young Master Zhuowen, this is the scorching sun extinction. However, I still recommend that you practice 3-foot wave. You have to know that the difference between a low-level cultivation technique and a mid-level cultivation technique is huge. Zhuowen shook his head slightly and said, Elder Qiao, you don't have to persuade me. I've already made up my mind. I want this scorching sun extinction. All right then. After Elder Qiao sighed, he flipped his right hand and took out a brand new bamboo slip from the Chenkuan bag at his waist. He tapped a few times with his right hand and the contents of fierce sun extinction were engraved on the new bamboo slip. After engraving, Elder Qiao casually tossed the new bamboo scroll into Zhuowen's hands. After receiving the bamboo scroll, Zhuowen revealed a smile. He cupped his hands at Elder Qiao and said, I've received Elder Qiao's favor this time. If there is a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay it. Elder Qiao's face was full of smiles. However, the proud smile on his face completely exposed his true intentions. After the two of them chatted for a bit, Zhuowen went to the cultivation method pavilion to find 2 more human tier armor skills. He then excused himself from Elder Qiao and left the cultivation method pavilion. After returning to the Veiled Dragon pavilion, Zhuowen immediately entered the cultivation room and began to practice the scorching sun extinction. There wasn't much time left for him. Although Zhuowen had smoothly reached the Viscera Vigorous realm, he was still not a match for a spirit-detecting realm cultivator. Perhaps Zhuowen could rely on the immemorial Dragon Raw Fist to fight against an early-stage spirit-detecting realm cultivator, but if he encountered a mid-stage or peak-stage spirit-detecting realm cultivator, he would only be beaten. Although Zhuowen had been in the limelight during his bet with Zhuotian, it was only because Zhuowen had borrowed the momentum of his breakthrough that he was able to withstand 3 of Zhuotian's moves. Later on, due to a freak combination of factors, he had entered the profound understanding stage, and the surrounding laws of heaven and earth had heavily injured Zhuotian. If it was a one-on-one battle, Zhuowen might not be a match for Zhuotian. Therefore, Zhuowen felt a sense of urgency toward the competition in 3 months. After throwing away the distracting thoughts in his mind, Zhuowen quickly placed his attention on the bamboo slip in his hand. The contents of the bamboo slip were the cultivation method scorching sun extinction. After carefully reading it, Zhuowen gradually fell into contemplation. The scorching sun extinction was indeed a fire-attributed cultivation method, and it was one of the more powerful low-grade cultivation methods. However, although the power of the scorching sun extinction was not bad, there were some risks in the process of cultivating it. This was because it mentioned that during the process of cultivation, one would have to endure the pain of being roasted by a raging fire. At the same time, if one wanted to succeed in cultivation, one had to use fire attribute energy to condense 3 fireballs in the dantian. The 3 fireballs complemented each other and formed a strange cycle in the dantian. The temperature of the 3 fireballs was extremely high, but their power was not ordinary. According to the cultivation technique, the 3 fireballs could forcibly rush out of the body at a critical moment. As soon as they came into contact with a material object, they would explode. This kind of secret technique that was similar to a hidden weapon was a good thing. If one was fighting against an enemy, one could throw out a fireball while the enemy was unprepared. Even if it couldn't kill the enemy, it could still cause the enemy to be full of openings. However, there was a certain side effect of the fireballs leaving the body. The host's strength would decrease, and if 3 fireballs left the body at the same time, the host would be completely weakened and would need a period of time to slowly recover. Although the scorching sun extinction is only a low-grade cultivation method, the secret method of the fireballs is very practical. If I use it well, I can definitely turn defeat into victory. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a hint of joy. Although this cultivation method had a lot of side effects, to Zhuowen, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. Sitting cross-legged, Zhuowen began to slowly understand the scorching sun extinction in his hands. Time flew, and soon, a month had passed. During this month, Zhuowen had been holed up in the training room to cultivate the scorching sun extinction. Even when Liu Dao came to report important information, Zhuowen ignored him and focused on cultivating the scorching sun extinction. Zhuowen was very satisfied with the results of cultivating the scorching sun extinction day and night. Zhuowen had finally cultivated the scorching sun extinction to the initial stage. There were 3 fireballs the size of quail eggs in his dantian. It was said that after mastering the scorching sun extinction, the 3 fireballs in his dantian would expand to the size of an egg. It had to be said that the side effects of the scorching sun extinction were very severe. During the process of cultivating the scorching sun extinction, Zhuowen felt as if he was in the lava of a 10,000-year-old volcano. His entire internal organs felt as if they were about to be cooked by the intense heat. If Zhuowen hadn't reached the vigorous viscera realm and strengthened his internal organs, Zhuowen wouldn't have been able to cultivate at all. In the end, he might have suffered from internal injuries. In a spacious courtyard in the Hidden Dragon Pavilion, a young man stood with his fists straight and his waist straight. He was as still as a mountain. With a loud shout, the young man suddenly moved. His entire body instantly turned into a vigorous monkey, leaving a few afterimages in the courtyard. His speed was so fast that it was dazzling. 3 flames of the scorching sun. With a shout, the young man suddenly twisted his waist. His entire body was spinning in a spiral shape in the air. As the young man's body spun, 3 fireballs the size of quail eggs suddenly flew out from the young man's body. After that, the fireballs revolved around the young man's body. The scene looked very strange. Return. The young man shouted again, and his entire body seemed to have stopped in mid-air. The 3 fireballs that were originally surrounding the young man's body immediately entered the young man's body with whooshing sounds. Ha ha! The scorching sun extinction has reached the initial stage. Now, I can make the chi increasing pill and the spirit clearing pill. What I lack now is the ingredients for making the pills. It seems that I need to go to the market. Chapter 27. Black Rose. The markets in Ratanama City were basically divided between the 3 big families. The market Zhuowen went to was under the jurisdiction of the Zhuo family. The market was very lively. There was a constant stream of people inside, bustling with activity. Many small vendors were shouting loudly in front of their stalls to attract the attention of tourists. Along the way, Zhuowen realized that the vendors in the market were all fully armed mercenaries. Then, Zhuowen remembered that Rattan Armor City was near the edge of the Annihilation Forest and felt relieved. The Annihilation Forest was one of the most dangerous places in Muqin County. There were many powerful meta beasts in there, and even experts didn't dare to enter the Annihilation Forest. Of course, danger was often accompanied by bountiful rewards. Other than the terrifying meta beasts, there were also many precious herbs in the Annihilation Forest. Furthermore, the meta cores left behind by the meta beasts were extremely valuable. Moreover, Rattan Armor City was close to the edge of the Annihilation Forest, so there were many mercenaries who lived on the edge of the blade. These mercenaries kept bringing the herbs and nuclei they obtained from the Annihilation Forest to Rattan Armor City to sell, thus boosting the economy of Rattan Armor City. The so-called meta beasts were ferocious beasts that could absorb pneuma and evolve continuously. The levels of meta beasts ranged from level 1 to level 10. The strength of a level 1 meta beast was equivalent to that of a Yin Void Realm warrior, while the level 10 meta beast was comparable to the legendary experts of the Heaven-breaking realm. Its strength was earth-shaking. Along the way, Zhuowen saw many stalls selling the medicinal herbs needed to refine the spirit clearing pill and the chi boosting pill. Therefore, Zhuowen did not hesitate to buy all of these medicinal herbs. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that the herbs required for the 2 elixirs were only ordinary herbs. They were not even at the level of spiritual herbs. However, the quality of the 2 elixirs were comparable to Tier 1 spiritual herbs. In particular, the chi boosting pill's quality was even higher than the fire dragon pill. It was obvious that the chi boosting pill's effect was much better than ordinary Tier 1 spiritual herbs. Even Zhuowen's heart was burning with excitement at the thought of using ordinary medicinal materials to refine a medicinal pill that was not weaker than a Grade 1 spiritual medicine. Even though the Zhuo family had a large business, they did not have a sufficient supply of Grade 1 spiritual medicine. Even the core disciples of the inner courtyard did not have access to Grade 1 spiritual medicine. Even though Zhuowen was a popular figure in the Zhuo family, Zhuowen could only get 3 Tier 1 spirit herbs a month. If other inner court disciples could get 1 Tier 1 spirit herb a month, they would be thankful. Now, Zhuowen was different. Since he could possess such a miraculous Jade Cauldron soul armor, Zhuowen could use ordinary medicinal herbs to refine medicinal pills with effects comparable to Grade 1 spirit herbs. Moreover, ordinary medicinal herbs were very cheap. Therefore, Zhuowen would have enough medicinal pills to cultivate in the future. With the support of these medicinal pills, Zhuowen's cultivation speed could reach another level. Perhaps in the remaining 2 months, Zhuowen could break through to the spirit detecting realm. After wandering around the market for about an hour, the medicinal herbs needed to refine the spirit clearing pill and the chi increasing pill were all gathered. The only thing missing was the origin nucleus of a level 1 spirit beast. However, what made Zhuowen disappointed was that along the way, Zhuowen actually did not find any stalls selling yuan nuclei. A level 1 spirit beast strength was equivalent to a Yin Void Realm armored warrior. Moreover, the spirit beast skin was thick and it had a natural advantage. Therefore, even a Yin Void Realm armored warrior might not be able to handle a level 1 spirit beast. The cultivation of the mercenaries in Rattan Armor City was not very high. Even if they worked together, they might not be able to capture a level 1 spirit beast. Could it be that the refining of the chi increasing pill has to be delayed? Zhuowen frowned as he muttered to himself. Zhuowen had already prepared the medicinal herbs for the spirit clearing pill, but the chi increasing pill was only missing a level 1 spirit beast's origin nucleus. Just as Zhuowen was feeling discouraged, a commotion suddenly came from in front of Zhuowen. Then, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the passers-by were actually rushing to the front. The Black Rose is here again today. Looks like we can feast our eyes. The Black Rose is not only beautiful, but also very powerful. Especially the things that their mercenary group sells are definitely the best. I heard that the Black Rose even brought a level 1 spirit beast's origin nucleus this time. Really? I didn't think that they could even get an origin nucleus. Looks like the Black Rose really lives up to its reputation. Hearing the words origin nucleus, Zhuowen was immediately interested. Looks like the refining of the chi-increasing pill doesn't have to be delayed. The corner of his mouth curved up slightly. Zhuowen's figure flashed and instantly squeezed through the gaps of the crowd. His entire body was like a nimble fish swimming in water. Zhuowen relied on his movement skills to easily reach the inner layer of the crowd. After looking around, Zhuowen discovered that the inner layer was very spacious. The surrounding tourists consciously left enough space in the inner layer, and in the center of the inner layer was a simple wooden platform that was temporarily built. There were a total of 4 people on the wooden platform, 3 men and 1 woman. What made Zhuowen curious was that the 3 burly men on the wooden platform were actually very respectful towards the woman in the center of the wooden platform. Clearly, this woman should be the leader of the 3 burly men. With curiosity in his heart, Zhuowen began to carefully size up the woman on the wooden platform. With one look, a trace of amazement appeared on his face. The woman was about 20 years old. She was very tall and wore tight black clothes that perfectly outlined the woman's mature and plump figure. Her skin wasn't very white, but was a healthy wheat color. Although the woman's appearance wasn't extremely beautiful, it was still above average. Most importantly, the woman's hot body was a feast for the eyes. People couldn't help but have the impulse to commit a crime. The woman's body was even hotter than Zhuo Meishue's, whom Zhuowen had seen before. Standing in front of the crowd, Zhuowen could even hear the rough breathing of many men in the crowd. Obviously, the woman's temptation was very considerable. Wow! Black Rose's body is really hot. I never thought that a woman's body could be so perfect. If I can get intimate with Black Rose, I'd be willing to die. Dream on. Black Rose's strength has already reached the peak of the Nirvana realm. She's only 1 step away from smoothly entering the Yin Void realm. She's also a little famous among the mercenaries. Moreover, the Flowing Flame mercenary group led by her is one of the most powerful forces in this area. You have no power or influence. How can you have such an opportunity? Just give up on this idea. Listening to the discussions of the passers-by, Zhuowen also understood that the woman in black in front of him should be the so-called Black Rose. Looking at Black Rose's hot body, even Zhuowen's heart burned with lust. He had to admit that Black Rose did have a unique charm. What shocked Zhuowen even more was that Black Rose's strength had actually reached the peak of the Nirvana stage. From her appearance, she was at most 25 years old. She was actually able to reach the Nirvana stage so quickly without the assistance of a large clan. It could be seen that this girl's talent was top-notch. At this moment, Black Rose, who was originally talking with the other 3 mercenaries on the wooden platform, suddenly came forward. Her perky but swayed with her footsteps, which immediately attracted the attention of the tourists under the wooden platform. Zhuowen could even clearly hear the sound of the other men swallowing their saliva with difficulty. After cursing in his heart, Zhuowen stared at Black Rose's body with a burning gaze. Thank you for coming to our stall. This time, we will still follow the same old rules. We will only sell 20 items. We have already stated the price. If there are many customers who want to buy the same item, then the highest bidder will get it. Otherwise, we will sell it at the original price. As she spoke, Black Rose gently nodded to the 3 strong men behind her. Then, the 3 strong men carried out a large wooden box that was half a person's height in front of everyone's eyes. Arriving in front of the wooden box, Black Rose gently opened the wooden box. Then, she took out a bloody pelt from the wooden box. She gently stretched out her hand and displayed the pelt in front of everyone. This is the pelt of a Grade 1 origin beast, saber-toothed tiger. The pelt is tough and resistant to wear. It is very suitable to be used as an inner armor. If you are lucky enough to invite an honorable arcanist to engrave a defensive rune on it, its defensive ability can be raised to a whole new level. It will have no problem blocking the attack of a Yin Void Realm warrior. Everyone. If you have such a close-fitting inner armor on your body, then it would be equivalent to having an extra life. Everyone, don't hesitate. We will set the price at 3,000 yuan. Black Rose's slightly magnetic voice slowly entered everyone's ears. Many of the surrounding male creatures were stimulated by this magnetic voice and did not hesitate to bid. After the first person made a bid, the rest of the people made their bids one after another. In an instant, the price was pushed to 5,000 yuan. Looking at the crazy crowd below the stage and the charming smile on Black Rose's face on the stage, Zhuowen secretly clicked his tongue. Black Rose's words were very pleasant. If no one bid, they would sell it at the original price. However, her voice was very good at arousing the desire of the thirsty male creatures below the stage to compete. In front of a beauty, men like to be in the limelight the most. Especially a charming woman like Black Rose, who could arouse the self-esteem of the male creatures. Imagine, under such circumstances, how could the male creatures below the stage settle down and not bid? Zhuowen's main goal was the origin nucleus of a grade 1 origin beast. Therefore, he was not as crazy as the surrounding tourists. He only calmly looked at the crazy crowd around him. When Zhuowen saw the sly smile on Black Rose's face, Zhuowen knew that Black Rose was not as simple as she looked. At least in this business, she knew how to use her charm to make the men bid crazily. In the end, the saber-toothed tiger's pelt was sold to a tall and skinny man for 8,000 yuan. When the man took the pelt from Black Rose's hand, he tried to touch Black Rose's hand. However, Black Rose's strength had reached the Nirvana realm. She pulled her hand out in time and threw a flirtatious glance at the tall and skinny man. It was easy for the man to be infatuated. He took the pelt in a daze and left. Chapter 28. Play hard to get. The following auction was even more explosive. Many male creatures with excessive hormones below the stage were bidding crazily in order to be able to get close to Black Rose. This caused many items that were not very valuable to be raised to sky-high prices. This made Zhuowen constantly click his tongue in wonder. However, as the items in the wooden box were continuously auctioned off, Zhuowen's brows gradually knitted together. This was because Zhuowen still hadn't seen Black Rose take out a meta-beast's meta-nucleus. When the last medicinal ingredient was auctioned off, a charming smile appeared on Black Rose's face. Then, the 3 strong men behind her pulled the wooden box to the back. "Thank you for your support. Our mercenary group has sold out everything we brought this time. See you next time." As she spoke, Black Rose winked at the crowd below the stage, causing them to be infatuated. Then, she walked towards a carriage with light steps. The 3 strong men standing behind Black Rose were loading things into the trunk of the carriage. Obviously, they were planning to leave the market. Zhuowen's expression immediately darkened when he saw Black Rose and the others about to leave. After thinking for a moment, Zhuowen strode towards the carriage without hesitation. Zhuowen's actions immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. When they saw that Zhuowen was actually walking straight towards Black Rose, a mocking expression appeared on their faces. Although Black Rose was very approachable and amorous on the stage, Black Rose's amorous feelings were only revealed during the transaction process. Usually, Black Rose was a rose with thorns. It was very difficult for ordinary people to get close to her. One must know that when Black Rose first appeared in the market, there was an ignorant mercenary who wanted to flirt with Black Rose. However, the mercenary ended up being bedridden for 10 days and 10 nights. It was said that even his manhood had some problems. Because of this, when the transaction was over, the people below the stage were very tactful and did not pester Black Rose. Moreover, the people in the market realized that Black Rose would only show her charming side during transactions. Moreover, she was not stingy with her charm when dealing with successful customers. That was why Black Rose's stall was so popular. Most of the people who came to trade were not here for the value of the items, but to personally experience the unique flavor of this thorny rose. When the 3 burly men who were busy on the carriage saw Zhuowen walking towards the carriage, they looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. Their eyes were full of warning. Zhuowen ignored the warning in the eyes of the 3 burly men beside the carriage and strode to the front of the Black Rose. Then, his pitch-black eyes stared at the beautiful rose in front of him. Many people in the market had gathered not far away. They looked at Zhuowen, who was standing in front of Black Rose, with pity. They knew that this reckless young man was going to suffer. Who is this brat that smells like milk? He actually dared to block Black Rose's path. Doesn't he know that the Black Rose is a rose with thorns? Hee hee. Looks like this brat is really daring. But when Black Rose shows her might later, I wonder what kind of expression this brat will have. Looks like there's going to be a good show to watch. Black Rose did not expect someone to stand in front of her. Moreover, the one who stood in front of her was a brat that smelled like milk. Her pretty face was momentarily stunned. If the one standing in front of her was a burly man, she would definitely teach him a lesson without hesitation. However, the one standing in front of her was a skinny young man. Black Rose didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this moment. "I say, brat, why are you standing in my way?" Seeing that Zhuowen was a young man, Black Rose's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of mockery. Zhuowen looked at Black Rose indifferently and said calmly, "You have an elemental beast's elemental core with you, right? Name a price and I'll buy it." Black Rose was stunned. She did not expect that Zhuowen would stop her just to ask this question. A sly smile flashed across her beautiful eyes as she said, "I don't have an elemental beast's elemental core with me. If I did, I would have sold it earlier. Since you have the pelt of a level 1 elemental beast, it means that you have hunted a level 1 elemental beast before. Don't tell me that you don't take out the elemental core after killing the elemental beast." The corner of his mouth revealed a hint of mockery. Zhuowen's mischievous eyes swept across Black Rose's body wantonly. His actions could be said to be extremely impudent. Looking at Zhuowen's mischievous eyes, Black Rose's face instantly revealed a look of disgust. The depths of her beautiful eyes were even more sinister. "Brat, your observation skills are not bad. That's right, I do have an elemental core with me. However, why should I sell it to you? Alright, I won't play with you anymore. Now, get out of my way." Black Rose's expression changed abruptly. Just a moment ago, she looked interested. Now, her face was filled with sinister coldness. "I heard that your cultivation has reached the peak of the Nirvana realm. If I can help you break through the bottleneck and enter the Yin Void realm in a short time, would you still not sell it to me?" Seeing that Black Rose was about to leave, Zhuowen was not in a hurry. Instead, he said calmly. Black Rose was about to leave, but after hearing Zhuowen's words, her delicate body trembled and she stopped in her tracks. "What did you say? You can help me break through the bottleneck?" Black Rose looked at Zhuowen in surprise and said incredulously. Zhuowen nodded slightly. There were many elixir recipes in the Jade Tripod Armor Soul. Zhuowen checked and indeed found an elixir called Near Void Elixir in the Jade Tripod Armor Soul. The Near Void Elixir was also a mortal level elixir. Its main function was to help warriors break through the current bottleneck. However, the Near Void Elixir could only be used on warriors below the Yin Void realm. It had no effect on warriors above the Yin Void realm. Black Rose happened to be at the peak of the Nirvana realm. She was only one step away from the Yin Void realm. Therefore, the Near Void Elixir was suitable for Black Rose. However, the herbs needed to refine the Near Void Elixir were a little troublesome. The main ingredient was a second-grade spiritual herb, Void Spirit Grass. "Do you think I will believe your one-sided words?" Black Rose obviously still didn't believe him. "Forget it if you don't believe me. Although I need the elemental core now, it's not necessary. Maybe I can find other elemental cores in other market." Zhuowen smiled and didn't continue to entangle with Black Rose. After taking a deep look at Black Rose, Zhuowen passed by her and was about to leave. Now that Zhuowen had spread the bait, he was not afraid that Black Rose would not take the bait. Warriors who encountered bottlenecks were most eager to break through. Moreover, Black Rose was at the peak of the Nirvana realm. She was only one step away from the Yin Void realm. It was known that warriors in the Heavenly Armor continent would only be valued by other warriors when their cultivation reached the Yin Void realm. Moreover, only warriors who reached the Yin Void realm before the age of 30 had the hope to continue to develop and advance. If they were still in the basic 10 realms after the age of 30, it meant that it was impossible to reach the Yin Void realm in the future. It could be said that the Yin Void realm was a watershed for all warriors. If one could reach the Yin Void realm before the age of 30, his future path would undoubtedly be much smoother. Although Black Rose was only 25 years old, it was very difficult for her to reach the Yin Void realm without the support and squandering of resources from a big family. If it were not for a certain adventure, It was likely that she would stay at the peak of the Nirvana realm for her whole life. Now that someone suddenly said that it was possible to help her break through the bottleneck, no matter whether the news was reliable or not, it made her heart tremble and her mood surge. Black Rose's pretty face changed several times. She bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth and finally called out to Zhuowen. The onlookers were a little stunned. They didn't expect that Black Rose, who treated others coldly in private, would take the initiative to call out to the young man in front of her. This had never happened before. Many people's eyes flashed with a touch of envy. However, Zhuowen didn't seem to have the slightest intention of stopping. He still walked leisurely in the direction of the distant market, as if he didn't hear Black Rose's call at all. Zhuowen's action undoubtedly stunned the crowd again. This guy was too unique. Many people here wanted Black Rose to take the initiative to call out to them, but this guy didn't seem to care at all. This guy is crazy. Black Rose rarely takes the initiative like this, but this guy actually ignored her. Hee. I bet that this guy is so arrogant. With Black Rose's hot temper, she will definitely teach him a lesson. That's right. Let's just watch the show. The onlookers' faces were full of astonishment at first, and then the astonishment on their faces suddenly turned into some gloating. They were very clear that when Black Rose had just arrived at the market, someone had also provoked her. However, the result of that person's provocation made everyone tremble in fear. However, Black Rose's next action greatly surprised the onlookers. She bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth and her beautiful figure flashed in front of Zhuowen. Black Rose's mature and charming face was slightly apologetic, and her tone was a little soft, which was rare. Little brother, I was a little rude just now. I hope you don't mind too much. As long as you can help me break through the bottleneck, I can sell you the Meta Beast's Meta Nucleus, or even give it to you. Black Rose was extremely eager to break through the Yin Void realm. Although there were some loopholes in what Zhuowen said, she didn't care. As long as she could break through the bottleneck, even if there was only a little hope, she didn't want to give up. Chapter 29. Violent Blood Beast. Looking at the Black Rose in front of him, Zhuowen gently sighed. Actually, he was also gambling. If the Black Rose had not stopped him, his Yuan nucleus would have been gone. Although it was possible that other markets had it, since it was readily available, why would he give up what was near at hand and seek what was far away? Don't worry, I will buy it directly. Now, take out the elemental beast's elemental nucleus for me to see. Zhuowen smiled and looked at Black Rose with clear eyes. Black Rose looked at the young man in front of her with a complicated expression. She knew that she had fallen into the latter's trap, but it was all voluntary. She was very eager to break through her current bottleneck. Sure. Why don't you come to our carriage? There are too many people here and it's not very convenient. Black Rose turned her head slightly and led Zhuowen to the carriage that had been packed not far away. The four burly men looked at Zhuowen, who was walking side by side with Black Rose, with some surprise. In their memories, although their leader had a charming appearance, she was actually very resistant to other men. Walking side by side with an unfamiliar man was something that had never happened before. This caused the four burly men to take a few more glances at Zhuowen, who was walking beside Black Rose. Pull out the suitcase with the Yuan nuclei. Black Rose pointed at a burly man and said indifferently. The burly man who was pointed at suddenly had a flattered expression on his face. He quickly nodded and got into the carriage. After a while, he came out with a box half a meter in size. The moment Black Rose took the box, the jade cauldron armored soul in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness suddenly throbbed, and then it gradually calmed down. Zhuowen frowned. He could not figure out what was wrong with the jade cauldron armor soul. The origin nuclei are in here. Take a look for yourself. Black Rose nonchalantly handed the box over to Zhuowen as she spoke indifferently. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He took the box and opened it with a bang. After opening it, Zhuowen immediately saw a blood-stained, sparkling and translucent crystal-like object lying in the middle of the box. Clearly, this crystal should be the origin nucleus he was looking for. Apart from the crystal nuclei, there were some miscellaneous items in the box. Zhuowen skimmed through them and ignored them. However, A piece of black metal lying in the corner of the box attracted Zhuowen's attention. When Zhuowen focused his attention on this piece of metal, the jade cauldron armor soul in his sea of consciousness throbbed again. Could it be that the abnormal movement of the jade cauldron soul armor was caused by this piece of iron? Zhuowen was startled. His eyes gathered on the piece of iron in front of him with a strange look. You can rest assured that this origin nucleus is real. This is something that our Flowing Flame mercenary group obtained after killing the saber-toothed tiger with great difficulty after losing a few of our brothers. If it wasn't for the fact that the saber-toothed tiger was heavily injured, our mercenary group might have been wiped out. Black Rose also noticed the excitement on Zhuowen's face and spoke with a slightly arrogant tone. Name a price, Zhuowen said without batting an eyelid. 10,000 yuan. This is the lowest price I can give you. If it weren't for the fact that you have a way to help me break through my bottleneck, I might not even sell it to you for 100,000 yuan. Black Rose glanced at Zhuowen with a sidelong glance, revealing an expression that said, "You got a big bargain." Zhuowen chuckled and took out his Chenkuan bag. Then, he took out 2 fire dragon pills from the Chenkuan bag and said faintly, "These 2 pills are called fire dragon pills. The effect of each pill is equivalent to a first-grade elixir. These 2 fire dragon pills should be worth 10,000 yuan. This little pill is comparable to a first-grade elixir." Black Rose's eyes revealed a trace of doubt. However, when she took the fire dragon pills and truly felt the rich medicinal power emitted from the fire dragon pills, the doubt on her face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a touch of amazement. This was because she could feel that the medicinal power of the fire dragon pills was not weaker than an ordinary first-grade elixir. There was no alchemy technique in the heavenly armor continent. Cultivation and treatment relied on elixirs. This was the first time Black Rose had seen such a dark and swarthy pill in her hand. She found it hard to imagine that such an unprepossessing pill in her hand could be comparable to elixirs. The fire dragon pills are refined by me. Since I can refine this pill that is comparable to a first-grade elixir, then I can naturally refine a pill that can help you break through your bottleneck. This pill is called the near-void pill. The near-void pill can greatly increase your chances of breaking through. Zhuowen also saw the strange and fiery expression on Black Rose's face. He hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and said. Hearing Zhuowen's words, the doubts hidden in Black Rose's heart disappeared by quite a bit. Her originally somewhat cold face also softened. Her gaze towards Zhuowen also carried a trace of astonishment. It was very hard for her to imagine that a 15-year-old youth in front of her could actually refine such a heaven-defying medicinal pill. However, to refine the near-void pill that can help you break through, you also need some medicinal materials. After you have prepared these medicinal materials, come find me. At that time, I will personally refine the pill for you. Zhuowen casually took a piece of paper and wrote down the medicinal materials required for the near-void pill. Then, he handed the white paper to Black Rose. A second-grade elixir, void spirit grass? Black Rose's gaze froze and suddenly cried out with a pale face. It is not that easy to break through to the yin-void realm. Naturally, the near-void pill required is of a higher level. The medicinal materials required for refining naturally cannot be too bad, right? Zhuowen said with a calm gaze. A trace of hesitation appeared in her beautiful eyes. Black Rose finally clenched her teeth and said, "Okay, 2 months. After 2 months, I will gather all the medicinal materials. At that time, you have to refine the near-void pill for me. However, I still don't know who you are. How can I find you after 2 months? My name is Zhuowen. I am a disciple of the Zhuo family. After 2 months, when you gather all the medicinal materials, come to the Zhuo family to find me. As long as you call my name, the guards of the Zhuo family basically won't stop you." Zhuowen said lightly, "You are a disciple of the Zhuo family?" Hearing this, Black Rose's pretty face suddenly revealed an incredulous expression. She did not expect the young man in front of her to be a disciple of the Zhuo family, the owner of this market. Thinking that Zhuowen could take out 2 fire dragon pills that were comparable to the first-grade elixir in one breath, Black Rose's pretty face revealed a trace of relief. Only a disciple of a big family could be so generous. At the same time, Black Rose had more confidence in Zhuowen's ability to refine the near-void pill that could help her break through the bottleneck. Zhuowen nodded lightly, then pointed to the box in front of him and asked, "This box? You can take it with you. Other than the yuan nucleus, there is basically nothing valuable inside. Just treat it as a gift for you. Then I will take my leave first. In 2 months, I will come to the Zhuo family to find you." Black Rose waved her hand, then jumped into the carriage and left. Looking at the gradually disappearing carriage, Zhuowen could not help but laugh and shake his head. It seemed that such a flirtatious Black Rose could not wait to gather the medicinal materials. However, Zhuowen, who was hugging the box, also revealed a trace of a fiery expression on his face. This was because other than the yuan nucleus, there was also the mysterious metal piece that could cause the jade cauldron armor to move. Under everyone's envious gazes, Zhuowen also rushed towards the Zhuo family. In the room, after Zhuowen took out the yuan nucleus from the box, he was not in a hurry to refine it. Instead, after carefully examining it, he gently placed it in his hand. Then, Zhuowen took out the mysterious metal piece from the box again. The metal piece was very unsightly, and there was even a trace of reddish-yellow rust on its surface. If it was not for the strange movement of the jade cauldron armor, Zhuowen really would not have noticed this unsightly metal piece. However, after carefully examining it over and over again, Zhuowen did not see anything special about this metal piece. Just as Zhuowen was about to give up, the jade cauldron armor in his sea of consciousness screamed again. Then, Zhuowen discovered that a small light suddenly flew out of the jade cauldron and entered the rusty metal piece. As the light entered, the rusty metal piece suddenly floated up. Then, under Zhuowen's astonished gaze, it shot a ray of brilliance into Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Then, lines of unfamiliar information gradually appeared in Zhuowen's mind. When Zhuowen came back to his senses, he discovered that the additional information in his mind recorded a secret technique. This secret technique was called Violent Blood Beast Body. It was actually a very rare secret technique for refining one's body. After carefully looking at the information about Violent Blood Beast Body in his mind, Zhuowen's face revealed an ecstatic expression. This was because Violent Blood Beast Body was a secret technique that used the essence blood of a spirit beast to refine one's body. In other words, the higher the level of the spirit beast, the stronger the body it refined would be. I never thought that buying the yuan nucleus today would bring me such a good fortune. It actually allowed me to find such a precious secret technique. If this secret technique is practiced to a high level, one's body can be refined to be as tough as a spirit beast's skin and flesh, impenetrable by swords and spears. Violent Blood Beast Body was divided into 3 stages. They were the first layer of Rampage, the second layer of Rampage, and the third layer of Rampage. Each stage required the assistance of essence blood of a spirit beast. The higher the level of essence blood, the better the effect. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, Zhuowen muttered to himself, in these 2 months, with the assistance of the qi-increasing pill and the Violent Blood Beast Body, even if Zhuo Tian's realm reached the soul transformation realm, I still have a chance to defeat her. In the family competition 2 months later, I will give Zhuo Tian a big surprise. The Violent Blood Beast Body isn't suitable for me to cultivate right now. Wait until I refine the qi-increasing pill and clear spirit pill, then I will carefully cultivate it. After muttering to himself, Zhuowen once again placed his gaze on the yuan nucleus in front of him. He carefully took out a trace of blood on the surface of the yuan nucleus and stored it away. This was the essence blood of a level 1 spirit beast, saber-toothed tiger. It was just right for Zhuowen to cultivate the first stage of the Violent Blood Beast Body. It's time to refine the pill. Chapter 30. Soul Skill Evolution. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart. His consciousness communicated with the Jade Cauldron Armored Soul in his sea of consciousness. The Jade Cauldron Armored Soul hummed softly and turned into a beam of light that drilled out of Zhuowen's body. Finally, it grew to the size of half a person. The entire Jade Cauldron was crystal clear. If it wasn't for the fact that it was damaged and ruined its overall beauty, the Jade Cauldron wouldn't be any worse than some rare antiques. After muttering to himself for a while, Zhuowen immediately activated the fierce sun absolute art that he had cultivated. A wave of fire that was converted from origin energy suddenly erupted from Zhuowen's palm. Then, it turned into a pillar of fire that entered the jade cauldron. Through the jade cauldron's shadow, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the pillar of fire that erupted from his palm was refined and solidified by the mysterious energy within the jade cauldron, causing its power to become even stronger. After doing all this, Zhuowen waved his right hand and immediately threw many medicinal ingredients from his tranquil bag into the jade cauldron. The moment these ordinary medicinal ingredients entered the jade cauldron, they were instantly melted into liquid by the high temperature within the jade cauldron. Furthermore, as time passed, under the high temperature, the useless impurities within the medicinal ingredients that had already melted into liquid slowly evaporated. What was left in the jade cauldron was the essence of the medicinal ingredients. Although Zhuowen knew nothing about the art of alchemy, fortunately, the jade cauldron armored soul would actively send out messages to guide Zhuowen during the process of alchemy. In other words, the jade cauldron armored soul was now like a good teacher that constantly taught Zhuowen how to refine pills. Feeling that the medicinal ingredients' impurities in the jade cauldron were almost all purified, Zhuowen finally took out the origin core of the saber-toothed tiger from his tranquil bag. His eyes flickered for a while before he threw the origin core into the jade cauldron. As the origin core entered, the jade cauldron immediately hummed. After that, Zhuowen realized that the origin energy in his body was continuously being absorbed by the jade cauldron. The pillar of fire formed by the origin energy also became several times thicker in an instant. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Zhuowen realized that in such a short period of time, he had actually lost close to a third of the essence energy in his body. It seemed that refining pills was indeed physically taxing. Fortunately, Zhuowen had the magical jade cauldron armor soul. The jade cauldron armor soul was like a brilliant alchemist. It tried its best to control the fire to the right degree. In this way, the probability of failure was reduced to almost zero. If a dabbler like Zhuowen were to personally refine pills, the furnace would probably explode the moment he started. After about 2 hours, the yuan power in Zhuowen's body was almost depleted. At this moment, the jade cauldron suddenly trembled. Following which, an extremely rich medicinal fragrance erupted from within the jade cauldron. Under Zhuowen's blazing gaze, the lid of the cauldron was lifted, and a dozen round beads with blazing light shot out. Zhuowen took out the prepared porcelain bottle from his tranquil bag. With a wave of his right hand, a gentle origin energy transformed into a large hand that enveloped the dozen or so elixirs. Following which, the elixirs were pulled into the porcelain bottle. Looking at the dozen or so fragrant elixirs lying quietly in the porcelain bottle, Zhuowen knew that the refinement of the qi-boosting elixirs this time was a success. Furthermore, Zhuowen could feel that the medicinal effects of the qi-boosting elixirs were even more concentrated than the fire dragon elixir. Obviously, its effects were stronger than the fire dragon elixir. I wonder how effective these qi-boosting elixirs are. Zhuowen gently pinched a qi-boosting elixir and swallowed it without hesitation. Following which, Zhuowen felt an extremely strong medicinal effect fill his entire body. Even his limbs and bones instantly became relaxed. A trace of joy flashed across his eyes. Zhuowen immediately sat down cross-legged with his palms facing the sky. He quickly absorbed the vigorous medicinal effects contained within the qi-boosting elixir. After an hour, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. There was a trace of joy in his gaze. He did not expect that in this short period of time, the yuan power in his body that was almost depleted to recover by more than half. It seemed that the qi-boosting elixir's effects were indeed much better than the fire dragon elixir. Furthermore, Zhuowen could feel that the yuan power in his body had increased slightly. It seemed that using the jade cauldron soul armor to refine pills could also increase the yuan power in his body. After all, the jade cauldron soul armor's continuous absorption of the yuan power in his body could also temper the yuan power in his body and promote the growth of his yuan power. Time gradually passed and another month had passed. During this month, Zhuowen had been in the cultivation room. Other than cultivating, he had been refining pills. After 10 refinements, the yuan core in the jade cauldron had finally exhausted its energy and shattered into powder. After these 10 refinements, Zhuowen had refined nearly 100 qi-boosting elixirs. This amount of qi-boosting elixirs was enough for Zhuowen to use for several months. Other than the qi-boosting elixirs, Zhuowen had also refined a bottle of spirit-cleansing elixirs. After taking a few spirit-cleansing elixirs, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the remnant resentment that had been bothering him in the blood essence elixir had completely disappeared. Furthermore, with the help of the qi-boosting elixirs, Zhuowen's yuan power had increased extremely quickly in this month. Finally, he had successfully advanced to the spirit-detecting realm yesterday. The greatest characteristic of the spirit-detecting realm was that the armor souls in the body would undergo a baptism and transform into new soul skills. Zhuowen currently had 3 armor souls in his body. They were the giant armor soul, the sword shadow armor soul, and the mysterious jade cauldron armor soul. After entering the spirit-detecting realm, the 3 armor souls had indeed undergone their own transformations. Among them, the giant armor soul and the sword shadow armor soul both had a soul skill. After the baptism, the 2 soul skills had been strengthened by quite a bit. Among them, the giant armor soul's soul skill, giant, had the effect of increasing the power of the armor skill and weapon by 2 levels. Now, it had become 4 levels. The sword shadow armor soul's soul skill, ambush from 10 sides, had also undergone a huge change. The 10 sword shadows had actually become 9. Although the number had decreased, Zhuowen could feel that the surface of the 9 sword shadows were suffused with a golden light. It was obvious that the 9 sword shadows were now much stronger than before. The name of ambush from 10 sides had also changed to worship of the 9 directions. Feeling the huge changes brought about by the 2 armor souls, Zhuowen couldn't help but be wild with joy. He could feel that as long as he used these 2 soul skills, he would be able to block Shuo Tian's all-out attack. As for the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, it was a little strange. Originally, the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul didn't have any soul skills. However, after Zhuowen had entered the spirit-detecting realm, the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul unexpectedly had a soul skill called Undying Essence. Zhuowen couldn't make head or tail of this soul skill. However, when he was cultivating, Zhuowen accidentally injured his arm. What surprised him was that the wound on his arm actually healed in an instant. From then on, Zhuowen found out that the Undying Essence's soul skill could actually speed up the healing of injuries in the body. In other words, with this soul skill, Zhuowen would be able to heal faster if 2 people suffered the same injury. This would be a huge advantage when the 2 of them fought. No wonder the soul skill has the name Undying in it. In the future, this soul skill's ability will continue to increase as his realm increases. When that time comes, no matter how serious his injuries are, he will be able to instantly heal. Then, he can truly be considered as undying. Zhuowen's face was also filled with pleasant surprise. The Jade Cauldron Armor Soul's soul skill was indeed extraordinary. After being excited for a while, Zhuowen's heart calmed down a bit. Although Zhuowen had just entered the spirit-detecting realm, he still had a lot of trump cards in his hands. Zhuowen believed that even a peak spirit-detecting realm martial artist might not be his match. He even felt that he could fight against a soul transformation realm martial artist. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door of the cultivation room. The sound of the knock was quite urgent. Slightly frowning, Zhuowen casually said, "Come in." Creak. The door opened, and a rather flustered figure rushed into the room. When this figure saw Zhuowen's figure, his footsteps immediately quickened. "Young master, something bad has happened." The person who came was the housekeeper of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, Liu Dao. At this moment, Liu Dao's face was covered in dust. "What happened? Why are you so flustered?" Zhuowen lightly shouted. His voice was mixed with a trace of origin energy, causing Liu Dao to stop in his tracks. Liu Dao's face immediately revealed a shocked expression. He also felt the powerful strength in Zhuowen's voice. It seemed that his master's strength had increased again in these short 2 months. Respectfully cupping his hands, Liu Dao said with a bit of hesitation, "The pavilion master of the Black Dragon Pavilion, Shuo Tian, has successfully broken through to the soul transformation realm a few days ago. Moreover, Shuo Tian has spread the word that in a month's competition, he will make you suffer a crushing defeat in front of everyone. Moreover, He will take revenge on the day of the competition. Zhuowen was slightly startled, but his face didn't reveal too much of an expression. It was clear that he had already expected Zhuo Tian to break through in these 3 months. Right now, this matter has spread like wildfire in the inner courtyard. Many people are not optimistic about young master's chances. Moreover, the hearts of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion's Veiled Dragon Guards have also begun to waver because of these rumors. Most people believe that you are definitely not a match for Zhuo Tian, who has already reached the soul transformation realm. A trace of hidden worry appeared on Liu Dao's face. He was the housekeeper of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, personally promoted by Zhuowen. His interests were already tied together with Zhuowen's. Zhuowen's glory and his loss were bound together. If it wasn't for his relationship with Zhuowen, with his current strength of the divine Veiler realm, he definitely wouldn't be able to become the housekeeper of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Because of this, many Veiled Dragon Guards were very unhappy with him. If Zhuowen really lost in a month's competition, then Zhuowen's prestige would greatly decrease. At that time, even if Zhuowen was the master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, the unruly Veiled Dragon Guards would definitely not be so obedient to Zhuowen. Moreover, the Veiled Dragon Guards who were originally unhappy with Liu Dao would definitely think of ways to push Liu Dao down from the position of housekeeper. Thinking of the consequences of Zhuowen's loss, Liu Dao's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He was extremely worried. Don't worry, since I can make Zhuo Tian lose once, then I can make him lose a second time. If you don't have anything else to say, then you can leave first. I still need to continue my cultivation. Zhuowen faintly smiled. His body suddenly emitted a powerful aura. Feeling the powerful aura within Zhuowen's body, Liu Dao was slightly shocked. In his heart, he became even more respectful towards Zhuowen. He knew that the master in front of him was extremely mysterious. He definitely had a lot of trump cards in his hands. Perhaps, he really could defeat Zhuo Tian in the competition a month later. Looking at Liu Dao, who was slowly retreating, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a flip of his right hand, a rusty piece of metal suddenly appeared in his palm. Chapter 31. The family competition begins when the warm sunlight shone on the earth. In a luxurious courtyard of the Zhuo family, a young figure had already woken up early and was practicing martial arts. Hoo hoo hoo. Powerful fist winds whistled, and the figure's fists were like a hurricane, constantly punching out. The entire air seemed to be boiling from the fierce fist winds. Roar! Suddenly, a powerful fist aura whizzed out from the youth's fists, followed by a giant dragon's aura that gathered around his body. When the 5 dragons quietly appeared around the young man's body, the young man flipped over and stood up. The momentum of his fists changed again, and a powerful aura burst out from his body. Then, a loud dragon roar sounded again, and the 6th dragon suddenly drilled out from the young man's fists. Compared to the young man, the 6 huge dragons were incomparably huge. However, the 6 huge dragons were all kneeling at the young man's feet. Their huge dragon eyes were filled with reverence. This scene was really a bit of a mouth-watering. Ever since the Primeval Dragon Roar fist broke through the 5 dragon roars, the difficulty has increased exponentially. Now, I've been practicing for 3 whole months, and I've barely broken through to the 6 dragon roars level. Although the practice of Primeval Dragon Roar fist is very slow, the progress of Violent Bloodbeast body is very gratifying. With the saber-toothed tiger's essence blood as a medium, the practice of Violent Bloodbeast body is also very fast. In just a month's time, I've already reached the first sky of Rampage. As he spoke, Zhuowen suddenly crossed his hands. Then, the muscles on the surface of his hands gradually bulged, and blue veins popped out. His hands were slightly scarlet, and a faint choking smell of blood came from Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen bellowed as he clenched his right hand into a fist and slammed it down on the ground. With a rumbling sound, the extremely hard bluestone tiles in the courtyard cracked apart like tofu. If others were to see this, they would absolutely be endlessly shocked because Zhuowen didn't use the slightest bit of origin energy at this moment. Instead, he merely used his own body to forcefully collide with the limestone slabs. Just how powerful would his body be if he could shatter the indestructible limestone slabs with his mere body? I really didn't think that the first layer of Berserk would be so powerful. Moreover, I only used the essence blood of the level 1 soul beast saber-toothed tiger to reach this level. If I can obtain the essence blood of an even stronger soul beast, then wouldn't the power of violent blood beast body rise to another level? Withdrawing his fist, Zhuowen's handsome face revealed a hint of joy. It was clear that the might of violent blood beast body had exceeded his expectations. Young master. A clear voice came from the courtyard's gate. Zhuowen turned his head and saw a smiling Chun-Er leisurely walking over with a basket. Chun-Er, what are you doing here? Zhuowen quickly walked to Chun-Er's side and took the basket from her hands with a gentle smile on his face. Can't I come to your place? For the past 3 months, you have been in seclusion in the training room. Can't I come to see you out of goodwill? Chun-Er pouted and said with a snort. Zhuowen scratched his head awkwardly. Hearing Chun-Er's words, Zhuowen felt a little guilty. For the past 3 months, he had been crazily training in seclusion for the sake of the family competition and neglected Chun-Er. After all, Chun-Er didn't leave Zhuowen when he was at his most difficult time. Zhuowen had always engraved this friendship in his heart. In addition, Chun-Er was brought home by his father when she was young. Zhuowen had long regarded her as his closest relative in the Zhuo family. Seeing Zhuowen's simple and honest appearance, Chun-Er also burst into laughter. The fake anger on her face also vanished like smoke into thin air. She said gently, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Today, I came to deliver food to you. Tomorrow is the family competition. You can't be careless with the food I'm giving you today." Speaking up to here, Chun-Er's long, shapely eyebrows slightly knitted. She asked somewhat worriedly, "Young master, I heard that the Black Dragon Pavilion's pavilion master Zhuo Tian has already successfully advanced to the soul transformation realm. Young master, do you have the confidence to?" Speaking up to here, Chun-Er suddenly became somewhat silent. Clearly, she was worried about Zhuowen's family competition tomorrow. Zhuowen smiled and rubbed Chun-Er's little head a little dotingly. He said, "Don't worry. When has your young master ever lost? Tomorrow, you'll see how your young master shows off his invincible might. I believe that young master will definitely be able to defeat that big baddie Zhuo Tian." Chun-Er's face was flushed red. She waved her pair of pink fists and snorted. Zhuowen couldn't help but laugh. Following which, his gaze calmly focused in the direction of the family's martial arts field. The day passed very quickly. When the sun slowly rose on the second day, the Zhuo family instantly became lively. Many Zhuo family servants were busily working in the outer courtyard. The reason why it was so lively today was mainly because the Zhuo family's annual family competition was being held today. The family competition was a grand occasion for the Zhuo family. Every time it was held on this day, it would attract many large factions of Ratanama City to come and watch. On one hand, they wanted to see the strength of the younger generation of the Zhuo family. At the same time, they could also secretly worm their way into being friends with the Zhuo family. After all, the Zhuo family was one of the 3 great families of Ratanama City. Aside from the Ratanama City's City Lord's Palace, the other 2 great families' strength was on par with the Zhuo family. If they could form a relationship with the Zhuo family, the smaller factions of Ratanama City would naturally benefit a lot. Aside from the Zhuo family, the other 2 great families of Ratanama City were the Wang family and the Chen family. However, the 3 great families didn't have a very harmonious relationship. In the past 10 years, they had fought over hundreds of times. However, the 3 great families didn't gain any benefits. Like the Zhuo family's family competition, the Chen family and the Wang family disdained to participate. Therefore, aside from the 2 great families and the City Lord's Palace, the other factions all arrived at the Zhuo family. They wanted to see how the Zhuo family's family competition was like. In the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, Zhuowen woke up early. After practicing a few sets of fist techniques in the courtyard, he brought Liu Dao, the official leader of the Veiled Dragon Guards, Zhuo Hanzhong, and Vice Commander Zhuo Lianqing to the family's martial arts field. The Zhuo family's martial arts field was already filled with a sea of people. There was an endless stream of people. The originally spacious martial arts field was now a little crowded. In the center of the martial arts field was a very large platform. Above the platform, there were many comfortable seats. These seats were basically for the older generation of the family with status. After arriving at the martial arts field, Zhuowen casually looked around. Suddenly, he saw a middle-aged man wearing a green robe. He had a scholarly expression and was walking towards him with a smile. Beside him was a beautiful girl who was somewhat evasive. This girl was Zhuoxiong. Ever since the embarrassing incident at the Technique Pavilion, Zhuowen rarely saw this girl with a trace of craftiness in her eyes. Now that she saw Zhuowen, she couldn't help but feel a little awkward. Seeing that her father insisted on walking towards Zhuowen, the corner of Zhuoxiong's mouth twitched. She unwillingly followed Zhuo Beitian to stand in front of Zhuowen. However, her attitude was quite cold. She didn't care about Zhuowen at all. Zhuowen greets uncle. The person who had come was Zhuowen's uncle, Zhuo Beitian. Zhuowen had a very good impression of this uncle, who had pleaded on his behalf at the martial arts field. Zhuo Beitian looked at Zhuowen with a meaningful gaze and then said with a smile, "Zhuowen, I didn't think that in just 3 short months, your cultivation would make such progress. It seems like your cultivation has already reached the spirit-detecting realm." When Zhuo Beitian said this, the heart of the sulking Zhuoxiong trembled. Her beautiful eyes looked at Zhuowen with some surprise. Although Zhuowen had accidentally reached the viscera-strengthening realm 3 months ago because he had entered the profound comprehending realm, it was not so easy to enter the spirit-detecting realm from the viscera-strengthening realm. Even Zhuoxiong, who was one of the most talented people in the Zhuo family, took almost a year to enter the spirit-detecting realm. However, this youth in front of her had only used 3 months to cross the difficult gap of the viscera-strengthening realm. This made Zhuoxiong's originally unhappy mood even worse. It was just a fluke. Zhuowen smiled and said modestly. Seeing that Zhuowen really admitted it, Zhuo Beitian's elegant eyes were slightly shaken. Originally, he had asked this question to test Zhuowen. In truth, he wasn't very sure. Now that Zhuowen had confirmed it, he couldn't help but be shocked. Zhuowen's talent was truly abnormal. Even his third brother, who was extremely talented back then, might not be able to compare. The most surprised people were Liu Dao and the other 2 who had come with Zhuowen. Among them, Liu Dao's face clearly showed a trace of joy. The stronger Zhuowen was, the more benefits it would bring to him. After all, he had placed all his wealth on Zhuowen. As for the silent Zhuo Hanzhong and Zhuo Lianqing, they looked at each other and saw the shock and disbelief in each other's eyes. So what if you're at the spirit-detecting realm? Could it be that with your current cultivation, you're really a match for Zhuo Tian, who has already reached the soul-changing realm? Zhuoxiong stood to the side and coldly snorted. Sometimes, people with high cultivation are not necessarily strong. As for whether I'm a match for Zhuo Tian or not, that's not up to you to decide. Zhuowen indifferently glanced at Zhuoxiong and coldly said, "When the time comes, let's see how you deal with Zhuo Tian. That Zhuo Tian has already said that he will make you suffer a crushing defeat." Zhuoxiong coldly snorted. Then, without caring about the others, she walked to the platform in the middle of the martial arts practice field. This girl, Xiong has been a bit strange recently. Zhuowen, don't take it to heart. Zhuo Beitian said somewhat apologetically. Zhuowen waved his hand, indicating that he didn't mind. "Let's go. Let's also go to the platform." Zhuowen was startled and subconsciously said, "Do I have to go up too?" Of course. As a core disciple and the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, you naturally have a place on the platform. Not to mention you, even the other core disciples will have their own seats. You must know that the clans tournament is a competition for all the disciples of the family, including the outer disciples and core disciples. However, the competition for the core disciples will be held at the end as the finale. During this period, the core disciples will sit on the platform like the elders of the family. Chapter 32. An unexpected way of entering. At this moment, there were already quite a number of people seated on the platform. These people were all elders with some status in the family. Sitting in the most conspicuous position was a tall and sturdy old man with slightly white hair. This old man was the head of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Xiangding. At this moment, there were quite a number of people surrounding the old man and chatting. Zhuo Xiangding obviously saw Zhuo Wen and Zhuo Beitian slowly walking over. His eyes flashed with a trace of brilliance as he laughed and walked in front of the two. His pair of tiger-like eyes were somewhat affectionate as he looked at Zhuo Wen and said, "It seems like you have made a breakthrough again. This time, you must perform well in the family competition. You must know that the winner of the family competition will be rewarded with a third-grade elixir. Even the top 3 will be rewarded with a second-grade elixir." Hearing this, Zhuo Wen's face suddenly revealed a trace of surprise. He did not expect the family competition's rewards to be so generous. The winner would actually be rewarded with a third-grade elixir. One must know that a third-grade elixir was extremely rare in the entire Zhuo family. Now that one was taken out as a reward for the family competition, one must say that the family was really generous this time. Zhuo Xiangding also felt the passion in Zhuo Wen's eyes, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. The few people who were surrounding Zhuo Xiangding and chatting with him were also somewhat surprised. As the head of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Xiangding actually personally went to welcome someone. They originally wanted to see what kind of person could make Zhuo Xiangding personally welcome, but when they saw Zhuo Wen's slightly immature face, their faces were filled with doubt. From the clothes that Zhuo Wen was wearing, they could tell that this young man in front of them should be a core disciple of the Zhuo family. However, even a core disciple would not have the honor to be personally welcomed by the head of the family. One must know that even the number 1 core disciple, Zhuo Tian, did not enjoy this kind of treatment. The commotion at Zhuo Xiangding's side also attracted the attention of some people. Not far from the platform, Zhuo Dingtian, who was conversing with the people in charge of other forces, also noticed Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Wen beside him. When he saw that Zhuo Wen was actually personally welcoming Zhuo Wen, his face slightly darkened. "Zhuo Wen can only jump around for now. After the family competition is over, I will make him suffer a crushing defeat. When that time comes, I hope that he can still jump around like he is now." Zhuo Tian, who was standing beside Zhuo Dingtian, also saw the scene at Zhuo Xiangding's side. His eyes were filled with hatred as he spoke. Young Master Zhuo Tian has already stepped into the soul transformation realm at such a young age. The title of number 1 in the family can only belong to young Master Zhuo Tian. The servant beside him couldn't help but flatter. Standing beside Zhuo Xiangding, Zhuo Wen also clearly felt a trace of strangeness. When he turned his head, he just happened to meet Zhuo Tian's pair of cold eyes. Zhuo Tian only smiled coldly and his mouth slightly moved a few times. From the movement of Zhuo Tian's lips, Zhuo Wen read what Zhuo Tian was saying. He said, "This time, you won't be as lucky as last time. This time, I will make you suffer a crushing defeat." The corner of Zhuo Wen's mouth slightly curved. He didn't pay attention to Zhuo Tian's slightly threatening words. Although Zhuo Wen was only at the spirit detecting realm, he had many trump cards on him. He believed that he had the strength to fight against a soul transformation realm cultivator. When the time came, it was still uncertain who would win between him and Zhuo Tian. After everyone was seated, Zhuo Xiangding also stood up and said some polite words. The words he said were nothing more than honoring the other factions to honor the Zhuo family with their presence in the family competition. However, when Zhuo Xiangding mentioned that the reward for the family competition was a grade 3 spirit herb, no one could remain calm. Some people even began to breathe heavily. It was clear that the temptation of a grade 3 spirit herb was too great. One had to know that even the Zhuo clan, a powerful clan in Vine Armor City, only had a few stalks of grade 3 spirit medicine, let alone some of the smaller clans. These smaller clans had never even seen grade 3 spirit medicine before. And this kind of huge reward also fully aroused the enthusiasm of the Zhuo family disciples. Many of the family disciples began to rub their hands together, eager to give it a try. Seeing that his words had sufficiently aroused the enthusiasm of the family disciples, Zhuo Xiangding revealed a trace of a smile. He then waved his hand and said, "Now, the family competition begins." The family competition was divided into 2 parts. The first part was the outer sect disciple competition. The disciple who obtained first place in this competition had the qualifications to be promoted to a core disciple. The second part was the core disciple competition. However, the core disciple competition was obviously after the outer sect disciple competition. The core disciple competition would only begin after the outer sect disciple competition. Some of the smaller factions that came to spectate the family competition were obviously here for the competition between the core disciples. Furthermore, the reward this time was a grade 3 elixir. This caused many factions to look forward to which clan's disciple would obtain the elixir. When the family competition began, Zhuowen and the other core disciples sat lazily in their own seats on the platform. Their gazes were bored to death as they watched the heated battle between the outer sect disciples on the martial arts field. However, the cultivation of the outer sect disciples was basically below the qi refining realm. Moreover, the armor skills they practiced were also very inferior. In Zhuowen's eyes, it was a bit like a child's circus. After watching for a while, Zhuowen began to close his eyes and rest. After approximately 4 hours, the outer court disciple competition finally came to an end. The final victor was a youth whose cultivation had reached the qi refining stage. With the end of the outer sect disciple competition, the core disciple competition was finally about to begin. The originally yawning crowd surrounding the martial arts field was now in high spirits. The outer sect disciples were not comparable to the core disciples. The core disciples' cultivation was all above the divine Vela realm. Among them, the publicly recognized number 1 person in the inner sect, Zhuo Tian's cultivation had reached the soul-changing realm. There were not many core disciples in the family. There were only about 20 of them. The opponents were selected in the form of drawing lots. They saw an old man over 50 years old holding a cylindrical wooden box in his hand. The box was filled with many bamboo sticks. The old man came to the center of the martial arts practice field and shouted, "Core disciples, come to this old man's side to draw lots. Draw lots according to numbers." The old man's voice was loud and full of energy. The vast voice spread out through the vibration of the Yuan power, which made it even more majestic and loud. After feeling the Yuan power fluctuation in the old man's voice, many people present showed a look of fear on their faces. This was because they felt a strong power from the Yuan power fluctuation. Obviously, this old man should be an expert of the Yin Void realm. They did not expect that the old man sent by the Zhuo family to draw lots was also an expert of the Yin Void realm. It seemed that a big force like the Zhuo family was really unfathomable. When the other core disciples heard this, they also leaped from the platform towards the martial arts arena. Moreover, each of them displayed their own powerful armor skills. In a moment, the martial arts arena was dazzling. These were the colors of the Yuan Qi displayed by the core disciples. Some of the outer sect disciples looked on with envy in their eyes. Being a core disciple, they naturally yearned to be one as well. Zhuowen shook his head slightly and jumped down with the other core disciples. However, he did not display his armor skills like the other disciples. He did not even use any Yuan power in his body. Instead, he jumped down directly. Zhuowen's action also attracted the attention of many people on the platform. When they saw that Zhuowen jumped down without using any Yuan power, they could not help but be inexplicably shocked. It should be known that the platform was more than 10 meters above the ground. If an ordinary warrior did not use the Yuan power in his body to slow down the falling speed, he would at least be seriously injured if he hit the ground with his fragile body. Who is this kid? He is so careless. The platform is more than 10 meters above the ground. This kid actually jumped down without using any Yuan power. This kid's brain must be flooded with water. Even a Nirvana realm warrior would suffer serious injuries if he fell from such a high place without using any Yuan power. This kid's cultivation has not even reached the soul transformation realm and he dares to act so recklessly. Sounds of discussion also spread out due to Zhuowen's unconventional behavior. Many small and medium-sized factions representatives had mocking expressions on their faces. They wanted to see the result of Zhuowen's careless behavior. Zhuo Xiangding also saw Zhuowen's reckless behavior. His brows slightly knitted together. His thoughts were similar to the others. However, Due to his trust in Zhuowen, he did not stop Zhuowen. Instead, he wanted to see what Zhuowen would do next. Just when everyone was discussing Zhuowen's suicidal behavior, they heard a loud rumbling sound. Subsequently, everyone's gaze uniformly fell on the back of the young man who had just landed. They saw the back of the young man kneeling on the ground with one knee. After pausing for a moment, he slowly stood up and walked towards the old man at the center of the training field as if nothing had happened. When everyone's gaze converged on the spot where Zhuowen had landed, there was suddenly a series of gasps. This was because the ground where he had landed had actually cracked open like a spider web. When everyone's gaze once again focused on the back of the young man who was acting as if nothing had happened, the meaning in their eyes suddenly changed. This young man's physical strength had actually reached such a terrifying level. Falling from a height of 10 meters, he was able to shatter the training field's ground just by relying on the strength of his physical body. Moreover, he was not injured at all. What kind of level did his physical strength have to reach to achieve this? Under everyone's strange gaze, Zhuowen also felt a little helpless. In fact, not using Yuan power to land was also a spontaneous idea of Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen's violent blood-beast body had already reached the first layer of rampage. Zhuowen really wanted to test how strong his physical strength had become. Of course, the result was unexpectedly good. Not only was he not injured at all, but the ground was also shattered because of this. Chapter 33. Bloody murder. Sitting on the platform, Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Beitian looked at each other and saw shock and doubt in each other's eyes. They never thought that Zhuowen's physical body could reach such a terrifying level. It seems that this little guy has a lot of secret, Zhuo Xiangding said with a smile. Ignoring the gazes of the crowd, Zhuowen went directly to the old man at the center of the training field. He casually took out a wooden stick and flipped it over to find the number 5 written on it. The old man took another look at Zhuowen and said coldly, "Next." Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Zhuowen discovered a figure blocking his path. Raising his head, he saw Zhuo Tian glaring at him with a cold expression. "Zhuowen, I hope your luck is good enough to last until the finals of the family competition. When the time comes, I will let you have a taste of what it's like to live a life worse than death. Some people are really despicable. Their faces have already been slapped once, but they still want to stretch their faces out to be slapped again. I really admire the thickness of their faces." Zhuowen sneered coldly. Ignoring Zhuo Tian's threat, he walked to the side and waited for the competition to begin. Zhuo Tian's face turned red with anger, but he suppressed his anger and said coldly, "What a reckless thing. If it weren't for your luck last time, do you really think you're some big shot? You won't be so lucky this time." One by one, the core disciples received the wooden skewers from the old man. The old man waved his right hand, and a powerful yuan qi gushed out. Zhuowen was surprised to find that the wooden skewers in his hand were flying towards the old man. The drawing of lots is complete. Everyone, go to your respective arenas. The battle will now begin. The training field was very large, and there were a total of 10 arenas. Zhuowen's wooden skewers had the number 5 written on it, so Zhuowen did not hesitate. He found the number 5 arena and jumped onto it. At this time, there was a figure waiting on the stone platform. This figure was tall and slender, wearing a white robe. He always had a scholarly smile on his face, and his aura was similar to Zhuowen's uncle Zhuo Beitian. Due to Zhuowen's shocking performance when he jumped off the stone platform, many people in the training field focused their attention on this unique young man Zhuowen. However, when they saw Zhuowen's opponent, their faces revealed a look of pity. On the platform, Zhuo Xiangding also noticed Zhuowen. When he saw Zhuowen's opponent, he couldn't help but frown. "It's actually Zhuorong. I didn't think that little guy Zhuowen's luck would be so bad. He met such a troublesome opponent in the first round," Zhuo Xiangding said with a sigh. "That's right. This Zhuorong's strength is ranked 4th in the inner courtyard. Even compared to Xiong and Meishue, the difference isn't that big. This child is also a spirit-detecting realm expert." Zhuo Beitian's expression was slightly unnatural. He knew that Zhuo Wen and Zhuo Rong could be said to be one of the seeded contestants in the family competition. Now that they had met in the first round, it was beyond his expectations. This Zhuo Wen's luck is really bad. He actually met a guy like Zhuo Rong in the first round. Zhuo Meishue said with a hint of schadenfreude. Although she was very shocked that Zhuo Wen was able to withstand 3 moves from Zhuo Tian, she didn't think that he would be a match for a spirit-detecting realm cultivator in a one-on-one fight. After all, it was already very difficult for him to withstand 3 moves from Zhuo Tian. As for a direct confrontation, Zhuo Meishue was never optimistic about Zhuo Wen's chances. As for the news that Zhuo Wen's cultivation had reached the spirit-detecting realm, Zhuo Meishue didn't know about it. If she did, perhaps she wouldn't think this way. This person's name is Zhuo Wen. It seems like he was promoted to a core disciple 3 months ago. However, he is really unlucky to meet such a strong opponent in the first round. I heard that this Zhuo Wen's talent is very good. Last time, there was an uproar in the martial arts practice field, and that time, he even defeated the coach of the martial arts practice field. So what? Senior Zhuo Rong is a spirit-detecting realm cultivator. How can a mere martial practice field instructor compare to him? Although this Zhuo Wen's talent is very good, he has only been promoted to a core disciple for 3 months. Could it be that his cultivation has reached the spirit-detecting realm in just 3 months? Most of the people in the martial practice field had their gazes gathered on stage number 5, and the discussion became even more heated. On the stage, Zhuo Wen slightly cupped his hands and said, "I'm Zhuo Wen, please enlighten me." Zhuo Rong was slightly shocked and said, "You're the pavilion master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, Zhuo Wen? Recently, there have been rumors about you in the inner court. It's just some rumors, they can't be believed." Zhuo Wen calmly replied, "Whether it's rumors or not, the truth will be revealed after we spar. My name is Zhuo Rong, you have to be careful in a bit." Zhuo Rong licked his lips, and his eyes suddenly turned scarlet. The originally refined temperament of his body suddenly disappeared at this moment, and was replaced by a savage aura. Zhuo Wen was startled. He didn't think that Zhuo Rong would become a completely different person in battle. His expression couldn't help but become serious. Peng! Zhuo Rong's legs bounced off the ground. His eyes were as red as blood, and his 5 fingers were tightly clenched into a fist. Without any fancy moves, he directly smashed his fist towards Zhuo Wen's chest with a whistling wind. Zhuo Wen could feel the enormous power contained in Zhuo Rong's punch. With a cold snort, Zhuo Wen bent his right leg and immediately dodged Zhuo Rong's punch. Then, his right palm suddenly slapped out, and a powerful wave of elemental energy suddenly whistled out and slapped Zhuo Rong's fist away. Zhuo Rong saw that his punch didn't hit, so he let out a low roar and twisted his waist. Like a wild beast, his fists continuously smashed toward Zhuo Wen's chest. His fists seemed to be without any pattern, but Zhuo Wen, who was in the middle of this fist technique, could clearly feel that these fists were all aimed at his vital point. Zhuo Wen took a deep breath and clenched his 5 fingers into a fist. His right leg suddenly stepped forward, and a low dragon's roar suddenly surged out from Zhuo Wen's body. Then, 4 giant dragons suddenly clustered around Zhuo Wen. Roar! A loud dragon's roar resounded. Zhuo Wen was not to be outdone and swung his fist at Zhuo Rong. Boom! With a loud bang, Zhuo Rong let out a muffled groan and retreated more than 10 steps. On the other hand, Zhuo Wen only retreated 3 steps and stood there like a rock, his eyes as calm as water. At this moment, the martial practice field suddenly quieted down. Originally, everyone thought that Zhuo Rong, who had reached the spirit-detecting realm, could easily defeat Zhuo Wen, a newly promoted core disciple. However, it seemed like Zhuo Rong was the one at a disadvantage in this exchange. Everyone's gazes changed as they looked at Zhuo Rong's back on the stage. "You also reached the spirit-detecting realm? Weren't you only at the divine Veiler realm 3 months ago?" Zhuo Rong's eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Zhuo Wen. He didn't think that he would be at a disadvantage in this exchange. What surprised him even more was that this youth who was much younger than him had also reached the spirit-detecting realm. In other words, this fellow had only used 3 months to climb from the divine Veiler realm to the spirit-detecting realm. This speed was simply too shocking. Catcher! A few cracks appeared on the teacup in Zhuo Dingtian's hand as he stared at the youth on the stage. He didn't think that the youth on the stage would be able to go head-to-head with a spirit-detecting realm cultivator and even gain the upper hand. This child's cultivation has reached the spirit-detecting realm? 3 months ago, this child had just reached the viscera-strengthening realm. It has only been 3 months and he has already advanced again. How can this speed be so terrifying? Zhuo Dingtian's low voice slowly rang out. There was a trace of disbelief in his voice. Compared to Zhuo Dingtian's gloominess, Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Beitian revealed gratified smiles. It was clear that Zhuowen's performance was within their expectations. No wonder the patriarch gave you the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. It seems like your talent is not ordinary. However, if you think that was my full strength, then you are wrong. I haven't used my soul armor in a long time. Once I use it, you have to be careful. This guy won't go back without seeing blood. Hee. At this point, a ferocious look appeared on Zhuo Rong's face. His face was suddenly covered with bulging veins. Then, with a loud shout, a blood-red shadow suddenly drilled out from between his eyebrows. Blood Wolf Soul Armor? Zhuowen looked at the blood-red wolf in front of him and his expression suddenly became serious. The Blood Wolf Armor Soul was a very evil armor soul. This kind of armor soul would affect the host's mind, causing the host to involuntarily have an impulse to kill. Correspondingly, this kind of armor soul would greatly increase the host's strength, especially when the Blood Wolf Soul Armor fused with the host to use the soul skill Blood Kill. The host's strength would be almost invincible in the same realm. Once the host used the Blood Wolf Soul Armor, if there was no blood, the Blood Wolf Soul Armor would not automatically return to the host's sea of consciousness. However, this soul armor would have a lot of side effects on the host. Looking at Zhuo Rong's rapidly changing expression, Zhuowen knew why Zhuo Rong's temperament had changed so much. It was probably because of the Blood Wolf Soul Armor. After Zhuo Rong used the Blood Wolf Soul Armor, Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Beitian, who were sitting on the platform, revealed worried expressions. It was clear that they were very clear about the Blood Wolf Soul Armor. After Zhuo Rong used the Blood Kill, he is almost invincible in the spirit-detecting realm. It seems like Zhuowen is not his match. However, I didn't think Zhuo Rong would be willing to use the Blood Kill. It has to be known that after using this soul skill, he will be in a weakened state. At that time, he won't be able to participate in the following matches. Father, should we step in and stop him? Zhuo Beitian looked at Zhuo Xiangding with a worried expression. His words were filled with worry. Let's watch first. Look at that kid Zhuowen's face. He doesn't seem to be worried at all. Instead, he seems to have a card up his sleeve. Perhaps this kid has a way to resist the Blood Kill. Chapter 34. The first victory. Xue Lang howled at the sky and glared at Zhuowen with his blood-red eyes. Then his entire body turned into a ray of bloody light and entered Zhuo Rong's body. At the same time, an extremely dense smell of blood spread out from Zhuo Rong's body. Along with the smell of blood, waves of bloody energy surrounded Zhuo Rong. The huge commotion on Zhuo Rong's side had attracted the attention of everyone in the martial arts field. Zhuo Tian, Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishue's matches had already ended because their opponents were not very strong. Now, the three of them were attracted by Zhuowen's change. When the three of them saw the smell of blood coming from Zhuo Rong's body, their eyes couldn't help but reveal looks of dread. This Zhuowen actually forced Zhuo Rong to use the blood tease kill? How is this possible? Zhuo Meishue also felt the powerful aura coming from Zhuo Rong's body and couldn't help but exclaim, truly ignorant. Zhuowen has already reached the spirit detection realm, so it's not strange for him to force Zhuo Rong to this extent. However, this guy's road to the family competition has come to an end. After Zhuo Rong uses the blood tease kill, it will be difficult for him to find a match in the spirit detection realm. Zhuo Xiong looked at Zhuo Meishue, who was making a fuss over nothing, with disdain. She raised her jade-like nose and spoke in a rather arrogant manner. What? 3 months ago, this guy had just reached the vigorous viscera realm. In just 3 months, this guy had already reached the spirit detection realm? Zhuo Meishue had an expression as if she had seen a ghost. Zhuo Tian, who had been standing silently beside the two women, also had a flicker in his eyes. He hadn't expected Zhuowen's cultivation to be so fast. Zhuo Tian's situation had clearly exceeded his expectations. Little sister Xiong is right. Zhuowen's road to the family competition has come to an end. Even I, who was at the peak of the spirit detection realm, wouldn't dare to easily receive Zhuo Rong's blood tease kill. This brat hasn't even reached the peak of the spirit detection realm, so he can only receive it with his life. Zhuo Tian sneered and spoke in a mocking tone. Bang! On the stage, the blood energy surrounding Zhuo Rong suddenly exploded. Then, the blood energy actually gathered in an organized manner in Zhuo Rong's hand. Not long after, Zhuo Rong's originally smooth hands suddenly had a pair of blood-red claws that were several feet long appearing out of thin air. His originally handsome face actually slowly had a bunch of blood-red hair slowly appearing, and a pair of sharp teeth even appeared in his mouth. Zhuowen, while I'm still rational, you should just admit defeat. At that time, once I use the blood kill, I will really not recognize anyone. If you admit defeat at that time, it will already be too late. Zhuo Rong's eyes were blood-red, and the veins on his face were bulging. He was gnashing his teeth as he spoke, as if he was enduring great pain. Shaking his head, Zhuowen licked his bright red lips and said excitedly, "Come on, I'd like to see just how powerful your blood ripple kill is." Then don't blame me for being merciless, Awu. Hearing this, Zhuo Rong's eyes were instantly filled with a bright red color. His legs bounced, and his entire body shot towards Zhuowen like a cannonball. The blood claws formed by his hands drew a demonic blood-red line in the air. Zhuowen's gaze focused, and he straightened his back. A powerful aura burst out from his body. Then, Zhuowen only saw Zhuowen pointing between his eyebrows. Only a clanging sound could be heard, and 9 golden sword shadows flew out with a whoosh. 9 directions worship. Zhuowen shouted in a low voice. The surface of the 9 sword shadows emitted a golden light, and then drew a strange trajectory in the air, faintly forming a sword formation. Buzz! The 9 sword shadows let out a low hum, and then the sword hilts pointed to the sky as if they were bowing to the heavens. Following the hum of the swords, the origin chi in the arena suddenly boiled. Then, the origin chi was swept into the sword formation. Not long later, a giant sword formed purely from origin chi appeared above Zhuowen. The giant sword was 10 feet long, and its aura was majestic, and its sword chi was awe-inspiring. Go! Zhuowen shouted, and the giant sword immediately flew towards Zhuo Rong. With a loud bang, Zhuo Rong's blood ripple kill suddenly collided with the giant sword. Then, a ball of light exploded on the arena, and the dazzling light made many people cover their eyes. When everyone regained their vision from the light, they found a figure vomiting blood as he flew out of the ring. After rolling a few times, this figure suddenly fainted. However, when everyone in the martial arts practice field saw the true appearance of the figure that had fallen below the arena, all of them gasped in unison. This was because this figure wasn't the Zhuo when they'd predicted. Instead, it was the Zhuo Rong whose strength had increased tremendously after he'd executed blood kill. When everyone recognized that the person who fell below the arena was Zhuo Rong, their gazes uniformly landed on the arena. At this time, a tall and straight figure fell into everyone's eyes. Clang! On the platform, Zhuo Xiangding's right hand, which was originally holding a teacup, could not help but tremble. The teacup immediately fell to the ground, and the sound of the teacup shattering echoed endlessly. He won. Although Zhuo Xiangding knew that Zhuowen would have some tricks up his sleeve, he thought that the final result would be a draw with both sides injured. However, he did not expect that Zhuowen would be able to defeat Zhuo Rong, who had already used the blood ripple kill. At this time, Zhuowen's situation was not very good. Zhuowen's blood ripple kill was worthy of being called an invincible soul skill of the same rank. Even if Zhuowen used all his strength to activate the Shadow Sword Armor Soul's bow of the 9 directions, he was still almost unable to block the full force of the blood ripple kill. If Zhuowen hadn't secretly swallowed a chi-increasing pill, perhaps the figure flying out wouldn't have been Zhuo Rong, but Zhuowen himself. At this time, Zhuowen's face was rather pale. Due to the huge impact of the blood ripple kill, Zhuowen had also suffered quite a few internal injuries. Fortunately, The Jade Cauldron Armor Soul's undying essence in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness was constantly being used. Waves of gentle energy were being emitted from the Jade Cauldron and fused with Zhuowen's internal organs. When this gentle energy entered his body, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the internal injuries he had just mentioned were slowly healing. At this rate, it would only take half an hour for Zhuowen's internal injuries to be completely healed. The old man who drew the lot looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. Then, he shouted, "Zhuowen wins this round." After the old man made his judgment, Zhuowen jumped off the stage and found a random corner. He took out a qi-increasing pill and swallowed it. After that, he sat down cross-legged and tried his best to heal his injuries. Zhuo Rong actually lost, and from the looks of it, Zhuowen's injuries aren't that serious. Zhuo Meishue's mouth was slightly agape, and a complicated look appeared in her beautiful eyes. This youth in front of her always did things that exceeded everyone's expectations. He has some ability, but Zhuo Rong's blood ripple kill isn't that simple. This brat Zhuowen must have suffered quite a few injuries. Let's see how he's going to continue the next round. Zhuo Tian snorted coldly and turned to leave. As for Zhuo Xiong who had been silent all this while, a rare trace of worry appeared in her crafty eyes. After taking another look at Zhuo Wen, she bit down on her red lips and finally strode towards Zhuo Wen's location. Zhuowen, who was originally closing his eyes to recuperate, felt a gust of fragrant wind. He slowly opened his eyes and discovered that Zhuo Xiong was actually standing in front of him. Zhuo Xiong pouted her red lips and stretched out her jade-like hand in front of Zhuowen. At first glance, one could see a small vine with intertwining tentacles lying in the middle of her rosy palm. This is a grade 1 spirit medicine, the rejuvenating vine. It has a very good healing effect on injuries. You seem to have suffered quite a few injuries, so take it. Zhuowen looked at the somewhat stubborn girl in front of him in astonishment. He didn't expect that Zhuo Xiong who usually didn't like him, would actually hand over a grade 1 spirit medicine to treat his injuries. Do you want it or not? If you don't want it, I'll take it away. Zhuo Xiong's face was slightly gloomy, and her tone was rather unfriendly. Zhuowen smiled and grabbed the rejuvenating vine with his right hand. He laughed mischievously and said, "Of course I want it. Thank you very much." Although he had the soul skill, Undying Essence, which could speed up the recovery of his injuries, Zhuowen naturally had no reason to refuse this good medicine. After Zhuo Xiong glanced at Zhuowen, she walked back to her own stage without saying a word. Zhuowen took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him and secretly summoned the Jade Cauldron Armor Spirit General, the rejuvenating vine, to condense 4 rejuvenating pills. Then, he swallowed 2 of them in one go. The effects of the rejuvenating pill were indeed not bad. Zhuowen felt that the recovery speed of his injuries had increased by quite a bit. At this rate, he would only need a quarter of an hour to completely recover. After about a quarter of an hour, the first round of the competition could be considered to have come to an end. There were only a total of 10 core disciples left. The second round of the competition was to determine the top 5 of this year's family competition. The old man who had drawn the lot earlier shouted out once again. The remaining 10 core disciples also obediently drew lots to match their opponent. At this time, Zhuowen was still in the 5th stage. However, what made him astonished was that his opponent this time was actually only at the vigorous organs stage. This made Zhuowen somewhat speechless. It seemed that his luck in the first round was really too bad. He actually drew a seeded contestant like Zhuo Rong. When this vigorous organs stage fellow disciple discovered that his opponent was actually Zhuowen, he was scared out of his wits. He simply didn't have any fighting spirit left. Zhuowen very easily knocked this unlucky fellow disciple out of the stage with a few punches. Because of this, he directly advanced to the top 5. Chapter 35. The challenge. As the top 5 were decided, the atmosphere in the martial arts practice field became even more heated. The spectators all knew that with the top 5 being decided, the following battles would only become more and more exciting. The remaining top 5 contestants were naturally the elites of the Zhuo family. Some of the leaders of the smaller factions could also sense that the top 5 were all at the spirit detecting realm. Moreover, Zhuotian was at the soul transformation realm. This caused the leaders of the smaller factions to inwardly smack their lips. It was obvious that the lineup of the younger generation of the Zhuo family made them feel extremely fearful. Since there are a total of 5 contestants left, one of them will draw an empty lot. The disciple who draws the empty lot will directly advance to the top 3. The old man coldly looked at the top 5 contestants in front of him. Then, he took out a wooden cylinder and circulated the energy in his body. The 5 wooden lots in the cylinder immediately flew into the hands of the top 5 contestant. Zhuoan casually caught the wooden lot that was flying towards him. When he turned his hand over to look, he was immediately stunned. The empty lot that the old man spoke of was actually lying in his hand. The disciple with the empty lot stepped forward. The old man swept his gaze over the top 5 contestants and sternly shouted. Shrugging his shoulders, Zhuoan took a light step forward. As Zhuoan stepped forward, many gazes in the martial arts practice field gathered on him. When everyone saw Zhuowen's face clearly, a strange expression appeared on their faces. They also didn't expect that the lucky person who got the empty lot was actually this youth who was in the limelight in front of them. Lucky guy, I hope you can keep up this good luck. Zhuotian coldly snorted and said indifferently. Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishue's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light as they looked at Zhuoan. They were clearly surprised by the former's good luck. The disciples who obtained the empty lot can return to the platform to rest. The remaining 4 contestants prepare to fight. Hearing this, Zhuoan pursed his lips and very consciously returned to his seat. However, his gaze was somewhat cautious as he looked at Zhuotian's figure. He wanted to see just how strong Zhuotian, who had reached the soul transformation realm, was. As the 4 disciples were ready, the entire martial arts practice field became lively again. Many spectators began to cheer for their favorite contestants. It looked very lively. Begin. As soon as the old man finished speaking, Zhuotian and the other 3 stepped onto their respective stages. Zhuotian's opponent was the silent Zhuo Lin Shuang, while Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishui, the 2 extremely popular girls, were his opponent. Zhuo Lin Shuang had a bitter expression on her face. Even though she knew that her road to the family competition would end at the top 5, she did not expect that her opponent would be Zhuotian, who was known as the number 1 person in the inner courtyard. Taking a deep breath, Zhuo Lin Shuang cupped her fists at Zhuotian and said fearfully, "Please guide me, senior brother Zhuotian." Zhuotian's expression was indifferent. He nodded slightly and said calmly, "1 move. I only need 1 move to deal with trash like you." Hearing Zhuotian's arrogant words, no matter how good Zhuo Linshuang's temper was, she couldn't help but turn red in anger. She coldly snorted and said, "Even though senior brother Zhuotian is very strong, you think you can defeat me with 1 move? Isn't that too arrogant?" "Arrogant? Hehe, that's because I have the ability to be arrogant. Now, I'll let you see the difference between the spirit detecting realm and the soul transformation realm." Zhuotian stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes focused and a long spear as tall as a person shot out from between his eyebrows. It was Zhuotian's armor soul, the wind god's spear. The moment the wind god's spear appeared, the entire spear was covered in layers of wind barriers. These wind barriers were completely formed by sharp wind blades. Waves of cold light constantly flashed within the barriers. It looked very terrifying. "Go." The corner of Zhuotian's mouth curled up slightly. The wind god's spear that was covered in wind barriers suddenly turned into a cold light. With a su sound, it flew straight towards Zhuo Linshuang. The sound of air exploding continuously could be heard. It was clear that this spear's power was not ordinary. Zhuo Linshuang's expression changed. She wasn't willing to be outdone. Her right hand suddenly pointed at between her eyebrows and a green tortoise that was half the size of a person suddenly appear. "Soul skill, tortoise shield." Zhuo Linshuang shouted loudly. The green tortoise's head immediately shrunk and turned into a green tortoise shell in front of Zhuo Linshuang. A huge tortoise shell shield was erected in front of Zhuo Linshuang. From the thickness of the tortoise shell, it was clear that this tortoise shell shield's defense was not ordinary. However, when the wind god's spear and the tortoise shell shield collided, a shocking scene occurred. The tortoise-shell shield that looked incomparably hard was actually like paper after colliding with the wind god's spear. Traces of cracks instantly appeared on its surface. With a catcher sound, the tortoise-shell shield didn't even last a breath of time before it was pierced through by the wind god's spear. The huge impact of the collision between the two caused Zhuo Linshuang to spit out a mouthful of blood. With a wah sound, she fell off the stage. The battle between the two was extremely short. Zhuo Tian had indeed only used one move to defeat Zhuo Linshuang, whose cultivation had already reached the spirit-detecting realm. Moreover, the spectators discovered that Zhuo Tian didn't even move a single step. The wind god's spear didn't even use a soul skill. With just a simple stab, Zhuo Linshuang was defeated. As long as one had a discerning eye, they would be able to see the huge gap between Zhuo Linshuang and Zhuo Tian, as expected of the number one person in the inner courtyard. With just a simple move, he defeated a spirit-detecting realm martial artist. This Zhuo Tian's cultivation should have already reached the soul-changing realm. As expected of the Zhuo family, they were actually able to nurture such a young soul-changing realm martial artist. It seems like the number one position in this competition will belong to Zhuo Tian. This child's cultivation is far ahead of the other disciples of the Zhuo family. On the stage, Zhuowen's brows slightly furrowed. He also didn't expect Zhuo Tian to be so strong. Although he could also defeat Zhuo Linshuang, he couldn't finish her off as easily as Zhuo Tian. It seemed like Zhuo Tian's strength had increased quite a bit after entering the soul-changing realm. No wonder this Zhuo Tian fellow is so confident. The gap between the soul-changing realm and the spirit-detecting realm is indeed not small. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He knew that the current Zhuo Tian was definitely an extremely difficult opponent to deal with. Congratulations, second master. With young Master Zhuo Tian's soul-changing realm cultivation, the champion of this competition will definitely belong to young Master Zhuo Tian. That's right. In the younger generation of the family, only young Master Zhuo Tian's cultivation has reached the soul-changing realm. Right now, who among the core disciples can be young Master Zhuo Tian's opponent? TSK. That's a grade 3 spirit herb. If young Master Zhuo Tian can obtain a grade 3 spirit herb this time, wouldn't his cultivation increase by quite a bit? At that time, he won't be far from the Nirvana realm. Young Master Zhuo Tian is only 20 years old. To be able to have such an achievement is already an extreme talent. Seeing Zhuo Tian's strong performance, some of the small and medium-sized factions that were originally surrounding Zhuo Dingtian became even more enthusiastic. They kept saying some words of praise. Although most of these words were flattering, it still made Zhuo Dingtian extremely happy. Which father wouldn't want his son to become a dragon? Seeing Zhuo Tian's outstanding performance, even the gloomy Zhuo Dingtian felt gratified. Compared to Zhuo Tian's battle which had no suspense, on the other side, the battle between Zhuo Xiong and Zhuo Meishue was filled with suspense. The two women were both proud daughters of the Zhuo family. The difference in their cultivation was not that big. Although the quality of Zhuo Xiong's soul armor was slightly higher than Zhuo Meishue was slightly older than Zhuo Xiong. Her rich battle experience had completely made up for the difference in the quality of her soul armor. Zhuo Xiong's armor soul was a pure white lotus, and it was called the White Lotus Armor Soul. This kind of armor soul could continuously release the power of ice, and the intense ice attribute energy could often seal and imprison the enemy unknowingly. On the other hand, Zhuo Meishue's soul armor was a dark blue flame. It was called the Blue Flame Soul Armor. The characteristics of this soul armor were exactly the opposite of Zhuo Xiong's White Lotus soul armor. However, the stalemate between the two was quickly broken by Zhuo Xiong. In the end, Zhuo Xiong used all her strength to release the White Lotus soul armor's soul skill, 1,000 miles of serene ice. It completely destroyed Zhuo Meishue's Blue Flame soul armor. In the end, Zhuo Meishue unwillingly took the initiative to admit defeat. At this point, the top 3 of the family competition had been completely selected. They were Zhuo Tian, Zhuowen, and Zhuo Xiong. When Zhuo Xiong returned to the platform with a pale face, she found a smiling young man sitting in her seat. She subconsciously said, "Zhuowen, why are you sitting in my seat?" The young man shrugged and grabbed the girl's jade-like hand. Before the girl could react, A gentle and magnetic voice suddenly sounded in her ear. These 2 pills are called rejuvenation pills. Its effect is not inferior to that of your rejuvenation vine. Now that you're injured, these pills should be very useful to you. After saying that, the young man lightly brushed past the girl without waiting for her to react. The hand that was holding the girl's hand also loosened. When the girl finally reacted, she found that there were 2 sparkling and translucent pills in her hand. Presumably, these were the rejuvenation pills that the young man spoke of. Rubbing the pills in her palm, the girl couldn't help but think of the young man's strong hand that grabbed her jade-like hand. For a moment, her maiden heart pounded and a trace of crimson appeared on her porcelain-like delicate face. This guy really doesn't want to owe anyone a favor. On the platform, Zhuo family said to Zhuo Xiangding with a face full of smiles, "The strength of this year's family is not bad, much better than last year's. It seems that in the market battle half a year later, our Zhuo family may be able to achieve a good result. Your daughter and Zhuoan have the greatest potential, while Zhuo family is the strongest. In the market battle half a year later, our Zhuo family will definitely surprise the Wang family and the Chen family." Hey, Zhuo Xiangding was also in a very good mood. His face was full of smiles. After all, he was able to see that the family's younger generation had done well. As the head of the family, Zhuo Xiangding naturally felt gratified. Following the selection of the top 3, the scene suddenly became lively. Many people couldn't hold back the excitement in their hearts and began to shout. Looking at the somewhat chaotic martial arts practice field, Zhuo Xiangding lightly snorted. Along with this snort, a powerful wave of elemental energy spread out and immediately suppressed the chaos in the martial arts practice field. After witnessing the terrifying strength that Zhuo Xiangding inadvertently displayed, the martial arts practice field suddenly became quiet. This family competition can be considered to have come to an end. The top 3 have also been selected. There is no point in continuing the competition. I will now announce the rankings. First place is Zhuo Wen, second place is Zhuo Tian, and third place is Zhuo Xiong. Zhuo Tian will be awarded a 3rd-grade spirit herb, while Zhuoan and Zhuo Xiong will be awarded a 2nd-grade spirit herb. The results announced by Zhuo Xiangding were within everyone's expectations. Zhuo Tian's cultivation had already reached the soul transformation realm. He was like a crane in a flock of chickens in the inner courtyard, so the first place naturally belonged to none other than Zhuo Tian. However, just as Zhuo Xiangding's voice fell, the originally silent Zhuoan suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Grandfather, I have some interest in 3rd-grade spirit herbs and want to challenge big brother Zhuo Tian. I wonder if it's possible." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.